like, and the thing is,
Oh,
in
just so
previous
you know,
Dragon
we're,
Age,
we're we're live now. I've hit the button,
no, that's
so we're streaming
okay,
on
cool.
one of the channels. Go ahead.
So,
For anyone tuning in, we're talking about I guess you could say bad writing, or people
yeah,
who are who can't write properly, people who are obsessed with inserting themselves into stories. But anyways, I'll just go ahead.
yeah. So yeah, like I was just like, who writes a character like that? Like, if you, and the thing is, in previous Dragon Age games, if you run into a character that you don't like, you can literally just tell them to go, go
Hmm.
hang themselves. In fact, you can even fight and kill some of the guys. Um, I mean, it gives you that choice, but in this game, it doesn't. It forces that character upon you, and then your character also doesn't make any decisions and is agreeable with everything. So, and you can't say no to having them included in your party. If they wanted to be representative of like reality, they would have given you the choice to be able to be the exact opposite of that, to say, not I'm anti this shit, I don't want this person in my party. Any of those things would have worked, but they wrote it in such a way that you have to go through that experience, whether you like it or not. And
It
again, I
seems
think
like
it's
there's
unnecessary.
definitely a I don't know sensitivity, as a dude say, like it feels like HR's in the room, so the,
Exactly.
the tone has changed a lot, and I guess the question is why are these people so afraid to offend people, right?
I don't know, dude. Like, to me, it's like, um, I don't know. It's like, whatever it is, right? Like, especially if you have a movement that you want to sort of catch on with everyone. Like I always say, to me, it's important that your message is seen as first and foremost before anything else. Especially if you're trying to appeal to, I would say, a much broader demographic, especially a youngish demographic. You need to sell especially dudes. Let me put it like dudes within those demographics. You need to package your message and whatever you're doing very well. You need to do it in such a way that it comes across as cool, not preachy, not like annoying. It has to be attractive. It has to have everything that's appealing to that demo, but at the same time, have whatever it is that you're trying to sort of like pitch or sell or position. Like but I just don't think like they were like a lot of these guys are capable of any of that sort of nuance. They have to force it down your throat. It has to be uncomfortable for you. They actively doing it on purpose to make you feel uncomfortable instead of saying, what, we want you to be accepting of this naturally.
I think they're missing something really important, right? So do you remember when the Hollywood strike happened,
Yeah.
and I was it Transformers that came out, and he was like, "What the hell is going on? Like, like, if you're a good director, you're a good
Yeah.
director, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you're a good writer. Doesn't mean you're a good producer. Everyone
Absolutely.
plays their role, and they need to accept that, and then you work together as a team to make something special. Like Casey Hudson himself, he's great,
Yeah.
but he needed, Drew to make sure it made sense. He needed I can't remember the guy's name, but he's the one who drew the characters. Like he drew the
Yeah.
Asaris,
Yeah.
like So you need everyone to kind of work together for it to work. And it
Hmm.
seems that what might be happening is some of these individuals, maybe it's a Kojima complex in the sense that, like, well, I'm that good, I can do multiple different things, and whatever it is, that they're not listening to, maybe you could say, the fan base, or they're just not listening to the people who are supposed to do these jobs. And as we saw with Concord, there's maybe a toxic positivity where
Yeah.
they all just cheer each other on and say, "This is great, this is nice." Um, I don't want to say there's a conflict of interest within that team itself, but I heard that the director was also one of the individuals who was helping writing it. And I think it's good
Yeah.
to have people with shared experiences, people who live those experiences. And this is one thing I always argued, that, like, I was telling my friend this: everything that you see about Tash is actually accurate. That conversation that she has with her parents is accurate, because I know people who have had those conversations with their friends and parents, and that's pretty much kind of how it turns out. Um,
Yeah.
even the performative situation that we're talking about,
Yeah.
that in itself isn't even bad itself. I'm not gonna lie, because initially I was thinking meh, but then when I thought about it, they've actually written it in a good way. So hear me out before you attack me
No,
and say what the
no,
hell are you
yeah,
talking about. When I think about different cultures on earth, like Japanese culture, we do things that are, you could say, strange, right? So in Japan, you bow.
yeah,
In Nigeria, you will prostrate. There's different things that people will find odd. Over here, we shake hands. In Spain, they kiss people on
yeah,
the cheek. Um, when you want to marry somebody, you can pay for the wife. Some people might think that's disgusting. That's like prostitution. There's just so
yeah,
many different things. And when you get even deeper into African culture and Asian culture, you go even to South American culture, and you go into Australian, Aborigine. Everybody just does things that we would think is completely and utterly bizarre. Like in some cultures, you can get an abortion, right? And in some other places, you're seen as a killer. There's just different things. So I say this to say, in this culture, they're saying when you offend somebody, you need to perform. You don't speak, because performing is the best option to do. And that could be push-ups. So for example, if I made a comment about let's say what's happening in Mozambique, and Luke gets offended, rather than me saying sorry, I could do something performative, right? And I'll do maybe 20 push-ups, 50
yeah.
push-ups, or whatever it is, and that could happen. Listen,
I'm trying to
in
listen to you seriously.
no, this is for real. Like if we're in Japan and like these Japanese people, I'm telling you right now, like I'm in the club in Japan with this dude. He's American, and this
Yeah,
dude puts his drink on the floor, and this chick, she walks by and she nearly kicks it. Now it's on the floor. It shouldn't be on the floor. It's his fault.
yeah,
And as soon as she nearly kicks it, because in that culture it's so apologetic, she literally like bows down and says, "Sumimasen," and she bows down as if like, "I'm so sorry, forgive me." And we're looking at her like, what are you doing? And the guy's like, no, it's sorry, it's my fault. Like, I'm so stupid. And he's like, man, the people here are so freaking strange. They have such a respectful culture where everybody, works together, and everyone has to, do it for the country, the cause. So in this other random culture that Tash is in, I can see why she's doing this. It makes sense to me.
but that's not even Tash's culture. That's just that
Oh,
random
sorry.
pirate
Yes, my bad. Yeah,
that's
yeah. The
supposed to
random pirate chick. Yeah,
be whatchamacallit from the previous game, but she looks nothing like the character.
yeah.
But I
My
suppose
bad.
none of the characters look like. But my thing is this, right? Like, I hear what you're saying, and like, it's a noble point.
But hold on.
But like,
Let,
my thing
let me
is,
let, let me
yeah,
round it up real quick, because I think the
okay,
issue. So when I thought about it this way,
yeah,
the problem is I don't think people want this discussion. I don't think people are really ready for it, and I think it feels performative. It feels cheeky. It feels too much. However, the
yeah,
actual foundation laid out is perfectly sound, because I've said he or she or whatever the wrong pronoun to people before, right? And they've corrected me, and I've just said, "Oh, okay." Sometimes I've said like, "Oh, sorry about that," whatever.
do you want
I've
to do
said, "Oh,
push-ups?
okay." But I won't do push-ups. But if I was in that culture, I would do push-ups, because that's
All
what my
right,
culture
nah.
dictates.
Well, if that's the thing, and this is the problem with this whole thing, is the fact that like it's not my culture, so I don't have to conform to anything you want. You have to either earn my respect, or you have to sort of like make me understand why I should do it. But I don't need to conform to Jack. And that's the issue. This is the whole argument about this whole thing, is that like don't assume that people are going to consume. That's not how the world works. Unless these are like things that within society are commonplace and are acceptable universally, no one is going to conform to what you believe or what you want just because you want it, or you feel that you're entitled to It's as simple as that,
But
unfortunately.
then this is the next part that I think like I have some critique for Dragon Age. But I have some, like I'm neutral on some parts of it. And the
Yeah,
part that I'm really neutral on is that, if they said, well, you have to do this, and the answer is no, you don't have to do this. We're just telling you a story, like we always do. We always tell you stories, especially if that story isn't forced. The story is just like, okay,
Yeah.
you participate in this story and you don't like this story, then I'm actually okay with that, right? Because I don't have to
Excuse me.
agree with the story. I don't have to like the story. You know, there is
Mm-hmm.
nothing that said um once they've told me about the performative actions that I can, that I have to like it. Now I think what Dragon Age could have done here is I could have then, they could have given me an option to say like, this is stupid, like this is so dumb, and I think that would have,
Yeah.
fit well with the whole RPG element of, hey, listen, like,
Exactly. Yeah.
I like some
I
things, I hate
agree.
some things. The problem is they didn't do that. They just said, we're going to tell you a story, and
Yeah.
if you don't like it, you got to keep it to yourself, and that's it.
Yep. That's it. They gave you zero options. And again, like my problem is aside from all that, they like it's just the writing is garbage. If you're going to be doing anything like this here, this is a very nuanced and very hot topic right now, rightfully or wrongfully so. But if you're going to be doing anything like this, at least have the sort of caliber of writers that can put this through or put this across without coming across like it's from Twitter. It's a direct post from Twitter or from somebody's Tumblr diary. Like just be professional enough to get a good writer to do it. And I felt like they didn't even try. I just felt like they literally just they picked like a name out of a hat and said, "Yeah, you write this." It's garbage, like garbage writing. And again, people have played several clips from the previous Dragon Ages. From Dragon Age Inquisition, there's a scene. There's actually quite a few scenes that involve such like topical subject matter, and they are handled so much better. And then you go back to Dragon Age 2, you go back to Dragon Age 1. Even there are scenes that sort of like delve into these subjects. But no one batted an eye because they were well written. Here, everything was wrong from the delivery to the whole. Like, and for me, the one thing that annoys me is the laziness of using modern day language. Like, you telling me you couldn't have found a way to position this in a medieval way that sort of masks the fact that, well, we're trying to directly reference this. It's the most Twitter. I was just like, come on, guys. Like, you are now just, you're not even trying.
Yeah, it seems a lot of people would have that take. I was on the Bioware subreddit, and most people speak about Tashinari as well. They don't like her, and it's I guess it's really interesting that the character you want everyone to like is the most hated, which also
Because
kind of says, what are you doing to what are you doing to that community? You're actually like negatively impacting them.
exactly how they are being perceived by everybody else. And again, like for me, for you not to be so self aware is just very selfish. It's like, for instance, when people talk about like, you know, things involving the black community, like maybe like someone wants to critique hip hop or rap. And of course, I understand that that's not even cultural, that's just a subculture. But like, especially like in America, I understand when like people will say, well, you know what, this is not helping progress our culture. This is setting us back from what like the people that came before fought for, etc., etc. So it's that sort of thing. But like the problem here is the fact that again, this in terms of like margins, like this is super marginalized group. So it's also not helping people relate to something that is for 90% or 99% of the population is unrelatable. So there's just so much nuance needed. You need better people, you need better representation. You need people that understand the seriousness of what they're doing, not just how it affects them directly. And I just feel that like the people sort of spreading the message are people that are more focused on them and sort of trying to get through this, or find some sort of a therapy or an out for themselves, and not thinking about the greater ramifications it has on everybody else that is in a similar situation or that has similar identity.
I remember I was watching a video about a guy who was talking about rings of power, and one of the things he said was that is rings of power that bad? No. Is it, is it even okay? No, it's below okay. And he says that one thing rings of power suffers from, because he himself is a writer. he says like Rings of Power reminds him of when he's trying to write a story. So he's saying like I'm a new guy and I'm trying to write a story and I've written some, some screenplays and some,
Uh-huh.
some books and people have critiqued them and that's fine because my writing was free. It didn't cost 1 billion to make.
Yeah.
So the problem is there's a lot of people who are writing these things that just not good enough, they're bad at writing. But once you put a budget behind it,
That's
and
the
especially,
thing, though.
especially
Like,
brand
these are like
name,
hundreds
then
of
things turn to
millions.
chaos.
Exactly. Like, these are like big franchises. These are like, you should be only getting the best people, not somebody that's just trying it out. It's not amateur night. It can't be like give them smaller projects to work with, and then try and get seasoned stuff. And I suppose it's hard. Or get and another thing is like some of these people, yes, they've got a lot of experience, but if you look at like the sort of games they worked on previously, um, they're not really in the same sort of. And again, I understand that people can cross over, people can, are multi talented, etc., etc., and a studio that made a racing game can make an RPG. Yeah, so, but I just feel that like it's just identifying the wrong talent for the wrong jobs. I don't think any of these guys are not talented enough, but I just don't think like these were the sort of writers, because there's a market that sort of writing can appeal to, but it's not the Dragon Age fans, definitely.
I would even say, to be honest, that the issue is more to do with quality control. I feel like as publishers have
Yeah,
decided to let the developers actually develop a little bit more, we're going to take a step back. And I think we see that very well with EA. Ever since Mass Effect and ever since the Inquisition, I think EA has
yeah,
been pretty much hands free with BioWare, right?
yeah,
And that led to Anthem and Andromeda. And I think
yeah,
this was them as well saying, "Hey, listen, Vilgard is yours. We're not gonna check you on anything.
yeah,
Whatever you want to do, you want to do." Now, what I hope is EA saying, "We'll let you do whatever the hell you want to do, and if this was a resounding success, then you can continue to keep doing whatever the hell you want to do. However, if it's not, then we're stepping back in, and the things that didn't
yeah.
work, we're taking out, and we're never seeing them again." I think that's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Well, what you're saying is in line with what the two founders of BioWare, when interviewed, were asked when they were asked about like being under EA versus when they were working independently, and they said, and it was the one guy, the short blonde guy, I forgot his name. It's Ray Mazuka, and I can't remember which one is which, but he said that well, what happens at EA is actually you get a lot of freedom. They give you enough rope to hang yourself. In other words, if you want to make this type of game and you want to make all these crazy creative decisions, they'll allow you to do it. But then you still have like fiscal responsibility to ensure that you make a profit. And he says that's where the catch is that if you don't make a profit, then yeah, uh, that's when the old like they put
The
uh,
old guard comes in.
yep, yep, the not the old guard necessarily, but the what do you call it, um your your
Management.
money man, yeah, your money man come in and start like saying, whoop, can't afford this, can't afford this, we're gonna have to lay off people, we're gonna have to, you know
Yeah. And I think
yeah,
that makes sense. Actually, it makes sense. I think it can work for some studios.
yeah, he
Uh,
says that's what they do. They allow you to do what you want to do, pay for it, whatever, but like, yeah, just remember there's a price at the end of the day. You have to make a profit for the company.
yeah. I would. I'm so happy Vilgard came out first before Mass Effect
Yeah,
because now I think there can be a look back and say, okay, what worked, what didn't work. From a E analysis point of view,
yeah,
and they can look at the feedback from Dragon Age and say at what point, because I think the question becomes very simple. We at EA maybe nudged you guys to make games that you didn't really want to make, aka multiplayer like games like Anthem and
yeah,
Mass Effect Andromeda. Now we're giving you the freedom, and you guys have kind of taken it a little bit too far to the other side. Um, we need to go back to exactly what they wanted, what the fans wanted, and that's a Mass Effect like game. So keep the tone, keep the aggression. Like it will sound crazy, but like I want to be able to like punch a reporter in Mass Effect, and don't for some reason cock block that because this person is a female or this person is black or this person is gay. Like no, everyone can get it,
Yeah.
and that's what Mass Effect has always been about. Um, I don't even know if there was ever really a scene where Shepard's gender was an issue.
I mean, it's in the future. None of that stuff matters anymore. And this is my problem again with the whole thing with fantasy. Like everybody
Oh,
says
what
this, and
about apart
this
from
Mister.
gender, even like race? Was there ever a scene where like
No,
Jacobs being black was a problem?
no, nobody cared. Like so, this guy, Mister Hardcore Mode, he was talking about this whole race thing, and sorry, this whole gender thing and whatever. And he's saying like this is the thing, right? If in life, in real life, you identify as, let's say, a woman, or you identify as a man, he says in the video game, it just makes logical sense that between the two options, your option is going to be the man or the woman. You're not gonna want a trans. You understand? Because why would you emulate? Because now you've been given the situation where you can just be born as that, or your character is created as that. Am I making sense? If you identify as a woman, now you get a chance to be a woman. If you identify as a man, now you get a chance to be a man. So why are we now trying to still simulate the experience of having wanting that, especially in a fantasy or in a sci-fi setting where you can just get that anyway?
That's a fair point.
And like I was like I hit my head and I said, of course, like this is why the whole pronouns thing is sort of silly when you think about it, because if that's what you identify as, aside from the they them, like if you either like in your life you say, you know what, I feel like a woman, and so you're gonna choose a woman when you play these games. You're not going to choose the option that's between, no, you're gonna choose a woman. If you identify as a, you're gonna choose a man. It's as simple as that. Like, and it's that's why it's always worked up until 2023, 2022. For some reason, that common sense no longer applies, and now we have to have this stuff included to signify who or what is my question. Aside from making a political point,
Hmm.
to say we want you guys to sort of comply or accept this as part of, that's where for me it becomes weird of like, okay, but logically if we sit and reason, and the problem is a lot of the time is that people are afraid to have these conversations because they're going to be called transphobic, and I would like, now the first thing I would ask is, okay, cool, can you explain all this stuff? You assume I understand what all this means. There's no class or session where I sat and people put laid all this terminology. All this stuff is from, like, to me, the last 3 years. So you are assuming a lot. Like, I'll plead ignorance because that's the, in fact, most people were in this boat where we're very ignorant about these things because these are very new concepts. And you need to sell your concept to me first for me to want to comply with your concept. And again, in terms of like how this, like for instance, relates to things like, well, how's that different from being black? Well, the problem with being black or being another race is the fact that you can't hide, like you can't live half of your life one thing and then become another thing. When it comes to race, you're born black, you'll die black, unless something happens in between. So your experience will always be colored by that, whether you like it or not. It's not something that one day you can say, you know what, now I want to be like this. So and if you look at, like, for instance, societally, you if black people are being persecuted, you are going to be persecuted. There's no sort of like, well, I'll just pretend to be this, then I can hide my true self. You can't hide it. So there's a lot of things like that. There's subtle nuance that just make the two things different, which is why I hate when the likes of David Jeffrey just conflate that with racism. Like, no, it's a different thing. It's not the same thing.
I think it's different. And I'm not really trying to play devil's advocate, but because I take the point that why would you want to be something else? when, like, in the game you can be anything you want. So why would you want to be maybe a version of yourself that you don't think is true? And why would you want to highlight that?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I take that point. I think the the point becomes, I want to represent myself in some shape or form. And I might want to do it fully, or I might want to do it only 80%, 90%. For example, most people who are overweight or obese will not create a character who is overweight or obese. They'll likely play somebody who's a little bit, better, slimmer, whatever. So, I will keep my beard, for example, when I'm playing games. I'll keep my skin shade. I will keep my hairstyle. But there's times when I've been like, you know what, I always wanted to have dreads, so let me stick dreads. My body build will be more like slim fit or normal. So I think if I can amend certain things and say I want to represent myself in this way, X, Y, Z, then is it possible that somebody can say, you know what, this is who I am. I am a woman now, but at the same time, I was a man before. And while this game might not represent that by showing me story points, what it can do though is at least make me um, feel represented with my character. And that might be the arguments there. I don't know anybody who I haven't asked anyone this question, so I don't know what the answer will be. But if somebody out there does have top scars or whatever, do they want this? Are there people who are actually playing this game and choosing that option? And if there is, then I guess it is what it is. Then I can't see the reason to get rid of it. Now, if it's two or three people, but you already have it programmed in, it wouldn't really matter, right? If EA turns around and says like, most people who play these games are not black people, black people is like 0.00% according to our data that we got. I would say, I mean, don't get rid of it just because the data says 0.00%, especially when it's already like a pretext, like you already have the data like in your system. So I take the point, but I think what that individual is saying is that he's making a statement of logic and fact when he doesn't actually really know if there's going to be somebody out there who would choose this option. And if there is someone out there who would choose the option, it's still an option. So he doesn't have to participate in it. He doesn't have to like it. So I think I'll say that. And I guess the next point would be, is it also possible in a fantasy game or even in a sci-fi game that a Miranda can say, hey, listen, I was, I was actually born a dude, but as time went on, I changed. And in the future, we're so much more tolerant. However, maybe we're not. I think we have this idea, this notion that the more advanced we get, the more caring and sophisticated we become. I don't think that's true. I think we can still be bad and evil because technology and having a care for society doesn't always equate, right? You can look at maybe the United States, for example. There's a lot of people in poverty. You can look at some parts of Africa, Asia, even some parts of Europe. People are in poverty. People don't have internet. People don't have healthcare, etc., etc., etc. So I think it's very much possible that in a future, let's say Mass Effect like game, like with, let's say, like thousands of years in the future, maybe there's people out there who actually are like, nah, I want original human beings with no, artificial stuff attached to them. And maybe they get prosecuted, right? Maybe they're the ones who are being hated. Maybe there's dudes out there who refuse to hook up with a woman or whatever, maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I think culture changes a lot. Some cultures, maybe, it was okay to be like, well, non-binary. It was okay to have multiple different partners. And now we fast forward with more technology. Now it's taboo. I think the Romans are known for being very promiscuous, very sexual. Um, they engaged in a lot of, you know, crazy things. I think the Greeks as well. The Greeks had like boyfriends or husbands or whatever, or love partners that were men. And we've now advanced so much, but guess what? We think that shit is disgusting. Whereas the Greeks were more open to it, right? Um, the Greeks who were supposed to be advanced had slaves, and I think there was the Persians who were like, "Nah, don't have slaves are bad. Like, don't do slaves." So yeah, um, that's my take on that. I won't be surprised if you just vanish because you haven't said nothing. It's such a long time.
Sorry. No, no, no. I'm listening. I've been listening.
Oh no,
But like,
I
I'm
was
just saying, like, sorry, I was muted actually. I actually answered, but I saw that I was muted. So, my thing is like again, like culture is subjective, dude. Like culture is like today's morality is tomorrow's sin. So that to me is like the society decides what's moral and what's not moral. My only thing is that like when in this particular context, it's very contextual to the individuals. It's not even a because again, it comes down to like you look at okay, cool. So um, how far is this just from differentiation of individuals? Is this like for instance like again going back to what I was saying about being black, like that is inherent in it's not like it's something that occurs with an x amount of an x population. No, that is like you're either Asian, you're either white, or you are black. And culture that then so many other things get attached to that. You cannot really hide from that, you can't really get away from that. So again, that's got nothing to do with morality. I'm just saying about like in terms of group dynamics now. And as a group, that is a significant group within the population as the world. And then you can go across all the different races. That is a marker that, again, it's just skin pigmentation scientifically. But at the end of the day, it's one of the things that culturally tends to separate people is because and again even within that there's more subcategories. My problem with this whole thing, and again it gets to this whole thing with like is that this is such a minute group when you compare it to that, then now we can literally say okay, what about that group, why don't they get consideration in the same sense that this group, because if we look at percentages, that group is actually more represented. It just happens or so happens that this group is more vocal. So we can really get into the semantics of that whole argument. And this is why I say the more you complicate this by further breaking it down, the more it becomes a very contextuous thing that you're going to spend a lot of time on. Whereas if you're making a game, you should be focusing on other things.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that. Yeah, I can agree with a good bit of that. But yeah, listen,
Yeah, man.
that's
But like, we'll never
exactly
end. Like, that's why I say, who's this ham? This is it. But that's the thing. It is what it is. But like, it is an argument that will always go on because there's no solution. There's zero solution to this.
mm.
I
This is
just
kind
think
of
better
why
marketing.
I think this is why I was kind of annoyed with the obsidian thing that I came across,
Oh yeah.
and I said that tweet. Let me actually get the tweet. I think I can pull it up. Um, Let me share this screen. Yeah. So Mel's husband said game devs need to call out gamers more often. This needs to be popular practice. Gamers cry way too much and feel too entitled. This is in response to an individual saying, I am no longer excited for Avowed, from being locked at 30 frames to having developers to cry babies on the internet. It's not looking bright.
Jeez.
Now, um, it's funny because he's saying gamers cry way too much. I agree. He's saying I feel too entitled. I 100% agree with everything he said. Um, and my response was, you know, calling out consumers just isn't really a good look, especially when there's a team behind it, a product. One person doesn't get to speak for that product or team, especially when everyone's been working on it for 5 years. Um, and I mentioned how it would be better if the team does, if somebody wants to speak up, they need to do it through official channels. So maybe get a senior person or someone like someone with a the community manager to draft up a response to these individuals for sure. Um, I'm all for the fight. However, when you're making a product and you're trying to sell that product, it, there's no sense in fighting with a consumer. It just doesn't lead to anything good or positive. In some cases, it won't have a material effect. In most cases, it won't have a material effect. However, what really irked me about this situation was Avowed has had very positive press. It's a small game and it's launching in between Monster Hunter and Assassin's Creed Shadows. This game needs good press, and I think it got that because with the previews, but when the previews came out, everyone's response was positive. People said the gameplay is good, it's enjoyable. Yo, I've been talking to myself, man. This Usher's this guy got kicked. I didn't even realize you got kicked. I've just been talking to myself all this time.
No, no, yeah, no. Like I moved to the next room and the Wi-Fi kicked me. Sorry, go
Okay.
on. You were still talking about the last thing I heard. You said if you're making a product.
Yeah, if you're making a product, you can't, for no whatever reason, attack the consumer. Um, it just doesn't end well. There's certain circumstances when you can. However, if you're in a team of 150 people, 200 people, 300 people, and everybody's been putting their time and effort, you could even say heart and soul, into this product for the last 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is. What needs to happen there is if you're going to make a complaint, it needs to go through official channels. You can't just wake up one day and say, screw my colleagues, screw everyone else. I'm just going to say this and I'm going to start a war with some trolls online. That doesn't make sense. Because as soon as that shit went down, the next thing that happened is, well, now my YouTube feed has avowed this and that, avowed hating this and that. I go on the Reddit page of Avowed, and they're getting an influx of new people coming in, and they're saying the same thing, which is like, "Oh, you should be angry with the devs," and they're like, "Man, now we gotta like block these people and whatever." It's just so unnecessary. It makes absolutely no sense. Like these people want you to engage; they want to fight with you, and if they want to fight with you, why are you giving them the opportunity?
Yeah.
It makes zero freaking sense. So I was quite peed off with that. And and then the dude said, you know, what did he say? He said, it's fine. And I said, no, it's not. There's hundreds of people working on the product. If every single one of them is allowed to attack consumers based on their feelings, you're just hurting the brand. Avowed got good previews and has more or less had good press up until this point. I'm sure the team wasn't pleased waking up to an army of gremlins going at them, especially with Elon tweeting at their main boss, accusing them of being racist and sexist. No one wants or needs that energy, which is
Yeah,
true. No
that's
one
true.
wants to wake up to this fucking nonsense. It's just complete. It's noise. It's garbage. It doesn't make sense. And listen, Ubisoft and Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed and Star Wars, they didn't really go at the fans. They did a pretty good job. But even they, like what, we could have approached this differently. We could have just turned off all the comments on YouTube, so the hate doesn't spread. We just kind of like block it off. But they didn't, right? Which allow people to really go at them a lot more. But anyways, I don't want that to happen to Avowed. I don't think Xbox needs that attention. I don't think Obsidian needs that attention either. So this dude should have kept his mouth shut. And I think he was already gagged. I think the community manager might have told him to just shut the fuck up, because I don't think he's been tweeting anytime soon. So anyways, what are your thoughts on the situation? Do you think it's okay for developers to express their views politically, express their
Yeah, you
views
know
by
how I
attacking
feel about
them? Go on, let us know.
this. No, like my thing is like what's the point? What do you gain? Except like if it's an ego thing, then of course, it's your ego. But over and above that, you're not gaining anything. Like, I mean, you first of all stand a chance to compromise whichever organization you work for, and whatever project you're working on, like what's exhibit A, what's happened here. And aside just from that is, um why would you want to pick a fight with the people that are going to buy your product? Like, to me, it makes no sense. I mean, I've worked in retail, I've worked in market, well, not really market, but yeah, like finance, investments, and like, there's no business that encourages you going after your customers for whatever reasons. And it just seems like career suicide to me, and I don't understand why. And my thing is, as a company as big as Microsoft, why would you allow your people to still have accounts that are not monitored? And especially working on top secret projects or projects that rely on media and marketing. There's too much compromise. This whole hands off approach is really, in my opinion, not good for a company like
It's
Microsoft.
freaking terrible. I hate it so much.
You know?
I've went on multiple rants, and I was Ham and Matt were they were having their podcasts, and I was in the chat, and I started going in at Hellblade too, and they probably figured out that, like, yo, Ty has this really weird anger for Hellblade. He's going really hard. Like, what's the problem? And I only went hard because Hellblade 2, maybe Redfall to an extent, but Hellblade 2 almost signifies what I think about Xbox. Like, it kind of, it's the example of Xbox failing to me in terms of their current status. It was a game that had a lot of flair. It looked great at its first initial showing. The trailer, all the back in 2019, it looked great. And then they showed you the Xbox with it. So now you're thinking, okay, new powerful console, new graphics, everything is great. Power, power, power. The game doesn't come out until years later, 2024. At that point, it's almost too late. It should have dropped day one on Xbox, or at least a couple of months after. But it didn't. It didn't make the launch window. They put more time and effort into building the game. And when the game was finally ready to be played, it just wasn't, it didn't do anything. And this is what I was telling Matt and Ham. It came and went. It didn't sell, it didn't do sales. It didn't sell consoles. It didn't sell Game Pass. It did absolutely nothing. And I asked myself, why is this game even like, not why is this game even here, but this game has done nothing for the platform. This is an L. This has to be an L because you've taken a team that is extremely talented and you could have used them for something else that would have grown the platform, something else that would have maybe slowed you down in relation to you going multi-platform. But that's not what happened. You let them make what they wanted to make. And because you didn't manage them properly, they did whatever the hell they wanted to do. And they released a product that has less game in it than its predecessor. If you wanted to make a fucking movie, make one and put on Netflix. In fact, I would even go further and say Hellblade 2 should be on that gaming thing that's happening. Like, Concord is there. Why isn't Hellblade 2 there? Hellblade 2 will be perfect in that situation, right? But it's not there. Hellblade 2 is just, it's, I'm just lost for words that game. It's still an 8 out of 10 for me, for sure. But you can't cater to just someone like me with this artistic take. It's not going to work. And everything I'm seeing them do, they're not building their ecosystem or they're not making it grow. They're doing things from a cloud perspective, PC perspective. Like, oh yeah, we're doing all these things. We're at the games.
But that's my thing. Is this, like, I don't know why people praise Xbox over calculation and speculation on what the future of gaming is. Meanwhile, they're doing nothing for the current or the present. And then people point to all the games that they bought because the truth of the matter is they've not made games. And this is why I always like I don't like this thing of just trying to say, well, no, they're under Xbox now, it's fair game. Yeah, we get that. Yes, that's how it works in terms of the papers, but the bottom line is the reason we bring that up is because every single thing that Xbox, sorry, not Xbox specifically, Microsoft, but including Xbox, that they've bought, they've sunk and then ended up selling it off. Look at all the studios. Go back to Lionhead. Go back. The only one that survived, surprisingly, is Rare. Go back to all these other studios that they bought. Lionhead, Ensemble, all these studios. They buy them and eventually they sink them and then they merge them into something else. And then Phil will go on to some documentary and say, oh, we regret closing Lionhead. If we were where we are now, we would do it differently. And then they go and then they shut down Tank. So it's to me, it's they just they're a very inconsistent business, and they will never. Gaming needs consistency, and I just feel that Xbox is way too inconsistent for gaming, and eventually they will end up being a player, but they're gonna get out of the conversation. Eventually, they'll be in the background as a publisher. That's my vision for them. But I think the Xbox brand eventually will be forgotten, just like Zune and all these other brands, because of the fact that they don't care. They just want Microsoft gaming.
What if you said that the Xbox brand would be forgotten in the sense of um, the consoles? I can see that, sort of, more or less. But the brand itself, the Xbox brand, I think still carries weight. I think Microsoft gaming isn't really necessarily attractive, and they'll just keep it Xbox, just to kind of to keep the fans happy. Now, maybe in the future the fans won't really care, and it will
Yeah, the
become
fans
Microsoft
don't give
gaming.
a crap anymore because they're gonna try and sell Xbox to casuals, and casuals don't really care. At some point, it's just gonna be which is what they always do. They always start with a brand, and it just gets watered down to nothing. They did that with Nokia, and then the brand faded into obscurity, and then they sold it off. Like I've seen Microsoft do this so many times with so many valuable brands that they buy. Skype, they did the same thing. Like like they just do not know how to let things that work just be. There's just too much other stuff that has to come in. Like even now, this was simple: make great games. Now you've bought studios, make great games. No, now it's about acquisitions. It's about this. It's about cloud. It's about Game Pass. It's not about games still. So here we are.
Do you know what? I'm gonna say that they're gonna stay with gaming for sure. And because the Nokia situation was like, well, 4.5 billion, whatever it was, like Bethesda cost more than that, right? And I don't think Xbox buys 70 billion, for no reason. I definitely they're into gaming, but they might not be into the gaming that we expect,
No,
which is,
that's why I say that.
console focused.
Yeah, that's why I say they're gonna just be a publisher. Like the whole Xbox is like not even like like if you look at how many times they've changed the studio name, it's just gonna be another name that's gonna I see it falling away as soon as like they no longer have to appease whichever console whatnot is left. They'll just do away with the name and just make it Game Pass, and then make it like people were already speculating last year that it's gonna be Game Pass. I can see them just doing that. Um,
Okay. Well, actually, we can hop into Nintendo now. I think it's going to be a good one. And funny enough, Industry Gaming actually had a report on, Nintendo and in fact that Sony's there, and they kind of echoed something that I've been saying for some time, which is like, hey, new challenges are approaching. I didn't read their article, so I don't
yeah.
actually know what they said. But I already have my talking points. I've always it's the same talking points that hasn't been defeated, disapproved by anybody because these are facts. These are not
I
lies.
mean, like,
These are not
okay,
reaches. These are all
yeah,
truths. And it's hard to
okay.
disagree with the truth when the truth is based on facts. My thesis statement for Nintendo is and has always been um, the Switch 2 will be the best selling handheld of the next gen, 100%. And it would probably do it by a wide enough margin. in the sense that it would probably be around 80 million to 130 million.
Yeah,
I say the Switch 2 will sell less than the Switch because of A, I'll probably just write this down so you can remember.
yeah,
A, it will sell less than the Switch because history says that Nintendo sequels tend to drop. That's going all the way back to the NES, the N64, GameCube, Wii U. The sequel, and even the DS and the 3DS, the sequels tend to drop. I say
yeah.
this as well because whenever Nintendo's faced with hard head competition, straightforward competition, they either do well or well enough, or they actually flop. It's between those two, um, and that's when it's a direct competition. So based on those two stances, and the fact that right now PlayStation is directly competing with their handheld, and Xbox is going to be competing with their handheld, this is the closest we've ever been to the seventh gen era where GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox were all on the same page. That's my stance. That's my thesis statement.
Like, but the thing is, I don't disagree with anything that you just said.
Facts.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's nothing. Yeah, like, there's nothing to disagree with it. Like, absolutely. Like, some of some of it is conjecture based on what's transpired. We can't really predict. We don't know. We're still speculating. So I would say those are pretty good guesses, and I don't think those guesses are far off in terms of what's going to happen. The only thing I doubt is your whole notion of real competition, because we don't know what the fuck Sony or Microsoft are going to be doing, or what sort of handheld. The only time we can actually sort of tell what those handhelds are going to bring to the table is when they finally announce or they show us what they're bringing to, like, or some sort of specs and how these things are going to work, and then we can see, like, on paper what they're at least thinking about doing. But now there's nothing. It's all just theory from your Jesus and a whole bunch of other people from the internet. So yeah, all those, I think those are good guesses that you made there. I don't disagree with anything fundamentally.
I'll even
Yeah.
add an extra part to it. In our last
Hmm.
discussion, you said you brought up the PSP and the DS. And one of the points I was trying to say is that if we just focus on the PSP and DS, we kind of miss the
Yeah.
bigger picture. Um, we got to expand out a little bit more and take the whole history of Nintendo and PlayStation into context, and Xbox.
Yeah.
That's I said a statement which was, whenever Nintendo has to compete, sorry, PlayStation and Xbox ran Nintendo out of the industry, during the seventh gen era, in the console space, right? And Nintendo pivoted towards a more casual, gimmicky approach. And here's
Well,
where
it
I think,
doesn't. Yeah.
mhm,
But the thing is, like, at the end of the day, like, sorry to interrupt you there. It doesn't matter what it is, like, how they choose. Like, people like to put a point in this thing, like, well, Nintendo, like, they chickened out. No, they chose a business model that worked better for them. They made a smart business decision, and people like to sort of penalize them for that. Like, no, 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 they were defeated. I'm like, they just saw that this was, like, I mean, even at that time, Xbox was lucky, like, that everything sort of lined up for them to be able to sort of compete against Sony, because what they saw was, like, if Microsoft can't beat them, we can't beat these guys. These guys are undefeatable. And then Sony sort of fumbled that. They fumbled the PS3 because they were in such a position of power thanks to the PS2. But at the end of the day, like, that was a very smart decision by them, and it gave them how many more? Because what everybody else would have said is, they would have said, do what Sega does, release another console, just make it more powerful and have more exclusives, which wouldn't have worked.
so I agree there. But it's more about buffering the point of, when Nintendo has to compete head to head, they flop. They go somewhere else, and that's fine. That's good. However, the gimmicks, and I could be wrong here because Nintendo could just be so inventive, but the gimmick
Yeah, they
situation
work.
doesn't really work as much. So I'll give you an
It
example.
works.
I'll give you an
Okay.
example. The
Yeah.
Switch gimmick was
Yeah.
great. You
Yes.
know, they sold it pretty well, and but it's a gimmick. And once that gimmick or that new flair happens, you need it. You need to find a new gimmick again, and that's
Yes.
why the
That's
we.
innovation. Yes.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
these are all just gimmicks anyway. Like anything that you treasure in gaming is a gimmick, but it's just so
No, no, no. But my point
grandfathered
is
in.
the
Yeah.
controller setup that we have now, the way we play games on Xbox and
Yes.
PlayStation, that's not a gimmick. That is core to the console space, right?
Well,
But
it's a gimmick that's worked continuously. Like a gimmick is still a gimmick. Like I mean,
yeah, but
all
would
it
you?
does
Yeah,
is
but you wouldn't say the PlayStation 4 controller is a gimmick.
yes, it is. Like it's full of gimmicks. Like I mean, all PlayStation controllers are always full of gimmicks that work sometimes.
No, 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 no. But a
Like
gimmick that
yeah,
is core to the way you play the game. Because I'll give you an example. Yeah, a gimmick
yeah,
is the rumble features a gimmick, right? You know, PlayStation's
yes,
haptic feedback is a gimmick, but that's not a core element to the game. Whereas the Wii remote was core to the game.
yes.
Yeah. So my point here is Nintendo did a gimmick, and gimmicks work once off, and then they just die off. That's why with the Wii U, no one really gave a shit because
No, no,
nobody
but the Wii
actually.
U had other problems like
It
that.
did, but the truth is,
Was
nobody wanted the Wii 2.
like yeah, we can go into that argument in terms of like what made the Wii and why it failed. There's a lot of other things that went into that
No,
thing,
no,
like
true,
it had
but
to do with that big ass screen they shipped with that thing, and like there was just a lot of things that they didn't think
yeah,
through.
but what I'm saying is like, do you think people wanted a Wii 2?
I don't know. Like, I mean,
I, I,
what
I,
else do you
I'll say
follow it
this,
up?
yeah.
Of course, they
Well,
wanted
well,
to follow up to the Wii, but they
well,
just
what I'll say this, yeah.
yeah,
The thing that Nintendo's really good at marketing, and this kind of go back into the DS situation. The
yeah.
reason why the Wii did so well was because it was a gimmick. It was cool. It was new. It was nice. It made you want to try it out. It made my family and friends, everyone had it. Yeah. However, Nintendo advertised it in such a way that I was like, oh, you know what? The Wii remotes, tennis, golf, shooting games with your real wrist, like they made it seem so innovative. Hey, sword fighting. There was a game called I think Red Dragon. Once you actually bought the Wii and you played all these games, you realize, nah, a controller is better to play Metro Prime. A controller is better to play Harry Potter. A controller is better to play Splinter Cell. And then you realize that the trade offs of the graphics being so weak was never worth the motion controls because the motion controls weren't even good in the first place. So the
There
gimmick,
is, but
so,
this
so
is the
the
thing,
gimmick
right?
faded.
Well, they were good enough for 101 million people. This is my whole point: is that you can call it a gimmick all you want. All it is, it's something that worked that they failed to follow up on,
No, no,
and
no.
all the Switch
Well, hold
was.
on. Well, they did release a Wii a stronger remote that had better controls. But I'll give you an example. Skyward Sword. It was a Zelda game that was completely based on on the Wii remote control. And
Yeah.
people say, yeah, it was cool, it was whatever it is. However, ask anybody,
Even Twilight Princess was based around the controls of
not as
the.
much as Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword was really like
Yeah,
they really
so
used
yeah,
it.
exactly.
But then if you ask people straight up, was it fundamental to to playing the game and enjoying the game? The answer is no. If Nintendo released Skyward Sword remake for
Okay,
remaster now, most people will play with the controller. They want to use
okay. All
the,
right. So,
the
what's your
motion
bigger
control.
point about the
My
whole?
bigger point is
Yeah.
once the gimmick fails, you need to find a
Okay,
new gimmick and you need to keep doing a
but
gimmick. I'll give you another
that's
example. The
okay.
DS as well. Because you said, well, the DS outdid the PSP. You're 100% right. The
And
DS was a
the
gimmick.
competition beats
True, but
the
hold on. The
Vita
DS
to a
was
pulp. Yeah.
but the DS was a gimmick as well.
Yes,
Because
but like that's like you call Nintendo's innovations gimmicks, and I'm saying to you like gimmick is a very like because they work. Like the point of the like
no,
they
but I'm
didn't like
talking
okay. So
okay,
let's
go
go to
on,
the
go on.
DS. All right, let's go to the DS. So did the DS fail for them to decide? Well, they're not gonna do another DS.
No, nope, they did 3DS.
Yes, and then did the 3DS fail?
And they weren't happy with it.
Well, that but no, but did it fail? Like I mean, like Sony's not happy with the PS5 sales right now, and it's doing phenomenally on the market. But did the DS fail?
No, 3DS didn't fail. I want to say
They
it fell.
just went and innovated something else. Like there's a difference between someone that has a gimmick that changes all the time or innovates itself all the time than people that use the same gimmick over and over and they just keep adding things that fall away within like the first year, like Sony's like haptic and all the stuff that they always put on their controllers. Even if you go back to the PS4 and you have that touchpad that no one ever used, and that those lights, all those bright lights on the controller that never did anything really, like only one or two games actually used them. But that's what I'm saying to you, is that like a lot of these gimmicks are just the same innovations over the same thing. Nintendo are the only ones that actually are willing to say, you know what, we're going to take a chance on something that's completely new. And if you innovate, yes, you're going to stand to lose a lot, but you also stand to win a ton, which they have. Every time they gamble, they lose some and they win a lot. And I think, to me, like that that's a formula that I think they should keep up. It's better than the formula that Sony has, or the formula that Microsoft has, and
They're not
that's
the same. Like they're really not the same. Sony's touchpad is just an addition to the control that does a few things here and there. It doesn't change the fundamental way you
well,
play the game.
it was supposed to. It was supposed to introduce, like whenever they introduced it, was it's the same thing that was at the back of the Vita, where you could use touch controls for
Yeah,
games,
but
but nobody ever used
yeah,
it.
but
That's the point.
yeah, well, essentially it's an extra button, right? I'll give you an example of another like something that isn't important. The Dreamcast screen, like yeah, it was there, but you didn't have to use it. The Dreamcast didn't say this was part of the game per se.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Now
yeah,
that gimmick is a little bit much. It's a little bit more, but it's not as detrimental to the console. For example, you could just ignore that, and you still have a perfectly working controller. The problem with Nintendo's gimmicks here is that the Wii controller was such a departure from what everyone else was doing that they were able to capture that market. But that market only comes and goes, right?
well, the thing
That
is, they
that
failed to
market,
keep up with the market. That's the only
all
thing I
that
would say.
market jumped onto the Wii, and they were happy with the Wii. But when I asked people, "Hey, did you like the Wii remote that well?" They would tell you like, "Yeah, it was a new thing. It was a new
Yeah.
fun thing to try out. I tried it. I played it. How many games
Okay.
did you buy for it? They didn't buy games for it. I
Okay.
had the Wii. I had like 3 games. I was done. I was like, okay,
Let me
cool.
ask you a question.
Hmm.
Um, how much of that did they retain with the Wii U?
How many
So
sales?
this no, how much of the identity of the, aside from the name, because everybody was expecting just like something that's going to be similar to the Wii, but just maybe the next version of that. How much did they retain from the stuff that worked
Everything
with
and
the Wii
more.
U? No, like it had no motion. That thing, they like the Wii U was a
No, no, no,
it
no,
had,
no, no. The Wii remotes worked with the Wii U.
but like
I,
how many, like the games were not built like the Wii games. They were
no,
different. They were built around the screen and not around the Wiimotes.
no. There was, I believe, there were still games that
There were
worked with the Wii
very few and
remotes.
far in between versus the games that were built to try and
But
utilize
then
the
again,
screen,
but the reason why I would
because
even
they
put that,
doubled down on the screen
but
that
you see,
nobody asked for.
the reason why I would put that down to is because they realized that the Wii remote was a gimmick. They
But what I'm
realized that it
saying
wasn't
to you,
gonna
like
work.
they didn't do more of that. They just actually decided to pivot to something else.
Well, I
So
mean, they didn't do more. I mean, well, they did release the super control. I go, you're saying like in the sense of a Wii 2, but I would argue that they didn't do more because they knew it wasn't going to work. They knew it was a catch-on
well,
effect. They knew the casual market had enough of the Wii. They needed something new. I
and
everybody I know
so
who bought the Wii was not interested in the Wii 2. They
because it
weren't.
had nothing to, it looked nothing like the
No, no, no,
Wii,
no, 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 no.
and
You're
it
just no, no,
didn't
no.
do
You're not listening to what I'm saying.
90%.
I'm saying that
Yeah.
because the Wii 2 is different from the Wii U. The Wii 2 is basically just the Wii, except it's just motion controls. So Nintendo, they knew that the Wii 2 wasn't going to sell as much because it was the casual market, the same casual
I
market
don't know.
that
Like
just
I think
comes
we
and
can
goes.
speculate. I just think they did what they always do, and they decided to pivot to another idea. Like, because that's the thing. Like, let's say one consistency is like, what can we come up with that is completely different from the previous thing that we did? And it's how they've been approaching it, and it's worked this far. I don't think it's because, and again, if you look at, like, if we talk about the limitations of the Wii and we look at where we are now, like the ultimate innovation or the ultimate evolution of that was going to be the VR that Facebook is spending billions trying to cultivate, that Apple is trying to make glasses so that that could work. So again, that is not an obsolete idea. It's just an idea that's very hard to implement. But it's such a futuristic idea that this was the second time they tried it, to have, like, not, well, I suppose, yeah, to have some sort of, like, controls that are not conventional. you know but my thing is, like, with them is that I don't think those ideas failed. It's just that they thought, you know what, we've, and this has got nothing to do with interest of the customers. Like, we've developed as much as we can in terms of those games. We're not going to be able to innovate further. So what can we innovate next? And then they came up with that screen thing that didn't work, because that's the thing, that because of how expensive that whole thing was to manufacture for them.
But like, I guess the question is, you think that the Wii 2, just Nintendo focusing on the Wii, except
Yeah.
a stronger version with a better controller, move controller, would have sold, like it would have succeeded?
Um, I don't know, to be honest with you.
No, take an
Um,
educated guess.
I think it would have been more successful than what they launched with the Wii U. I think the
Okay.
Wii U, because I've watched the entire documentary on the Wii U, and the problem is no one knew what it was. So it's very difficult to sell something that even your own staff doesn't really. There was not a lot of passion behind that. And I need to actually go rewatch that documentary. It's actually quite interesting. But again, it's not that like they were moving away from a bad idea that had failed. I mean, if the idea produced 100 million, I would take another shot at it. That's a logical thing. It worked the first time, try it again, and it failed. Like a good example of that is with Microsoft with the Kinect.
Connect.
Kinect worked the first time around. It failed because of messaging. It didn't fail because the technology was obsolete. It's because of the fact that Microsoft couldn't sell it to the people. And meanwhile, again, they tried to sell it as a TV product and not what they initially sold it as, like Milo. You're going to be able to talk to, like, you're going to have like a game where that's going to enable you to talk to characters in the game. You're going to be able to control your character. The whole thing was most you're the controller. Now it ended up being to control your TV instead of for the games. So again, they pivoted from an idea that was working, but they never followed through. And where all those ideas were going through were through VR,
Do you
which
know?
is
I
what
would
we have.
even argue that they had fear again, because now you're seeing PlayStation drop the Move controls. You're seeing Xbox do the Kinect. So once again, your little trick needs to be more. You can't just do a sequel to it, because your competitors are going to do the same. Guys who ran you out of business have said, "Great idea. We're going to take that idea. We're going to make better versions of that idea, and we're going to take over again." So of course it
But
has
they
to be
failed.
innovation.
Like, they didn't even come close to what the Wii did. Like, none of their
Yeah,
little
but
gadgets
you
came
see,
close.
my point is, the
They
a
could even
Wii
sell
two a
their
Wii two
base
doesn't
consoles
sell.
to the
A
beats
Wii
that,
two
like,
a Wii two sells far better than the Wii U. I agree with that, and obviously they have
yeah.
to sort out the price problem, sort out the marketing problem. They have to sort out all these other issues. I 100% agree with that. It still doesn't do crazy numbers though, because
But
remember,
like, yeah, again,
Wii U's are like 20
respectfully,
something
yeah.
million. Yeah,
But
no
again,
respect. Yeah, but like, I mean, like, what's the educated guess? Like, are we, because if the Xbox One sells 70 million or whatever it is, and
yeah,
PS5 PS4 sells like 100 and something million, like what do we think the Wii 2 does? Like what? Like
it would have
80
done better.
million,
I don't know. Like,
90?
I just think it would have done better than the whatchamacallit,
Yeah, yeah, but
the Wii
no,
U.
true, but that's not saying much, because the Wii U did like 20, like if
Let's
15
say
million
it
or
would have
whatever.
done like, okay, if I had to take a guess, let me say it would have done something like launch goes well.
But
It has the
before you even
sequels
come
to
to
the
the
games that
conclusion,
they made. Yeah,
before you even come to
yeah,
the conclusion, I would say the problem is, you're still in a situation where the Nintendo fans are getting the Wii to play Wii games. That's fine. That's fair. You're always going to get those sales.
yeah,
But the same Nintendo fans got the Wii U as well, because they wanted to play Nintendo games. It's a Nintendo game, whatever it is. The question
yeah.
is, are the casuals interested in the Wii 2? My answer to that is no, no, they're not. Because I
Okay,
know people
and
who got the
your
Wii.
answer is based on.
I'm okay. So let me go from a subjective point of view, right? I know people who got the Wii. And once they played the Wii Sports, once they played the Wii Fit, and all these other games, they were done. There was nothing else for you to attract them to, because you can't even tell my friend's girlfriend who got the Wii, and tell her like, yeah, this is good, get the Wii too. And next question is going to be why. I already have one. I
Okay,
hardly even
so
touch
what
it.
what okay, so let me ask you a question. So what games did the Wii or does the Switch have that the Wii did not have, that makes such a significant difference in terms of you as a Nintendo fan getting that console or not getting it?
No, I mean I got all the Nintendo consoles. I have the Wii, I have the Wii U, I have the
Yeah. So
Switch.
what? Okay, but like, what games does the Switch have that that console did not have to
Nothing. The Wii
make it a
U,
worse
the
console?
Wii U had the Wii U had great games.
No, no, I mean the Wii now, because you're saying that besides those little workout games, there's nothing
Mhm.
else to play.
No,
So I'm
I didn't
asking,
mean like that. No, it had Mad
but
World.
that's what I'm saying. Like again, like it had.
Mad World was a good game.
Okay, what else? Is it? Ah, crap.
It had Mario Kart.
So okay, so instead of mentioning individual games, hey, but
Super Mario Bros was out on the Wii as well.
so what games, what experiences could you get, or did you not that you get on the Switch that you do not get on the Wii?
What
Has, in other words, what I'm asking you is, has Nintendo's offering on their consoles changed so much,
No, no,
so
no.
drastic?
The games are the exact same.
Okay, so what games did you not get? Oh snap! Okay, no, I got killed. So I had to raid my cop. Sorry,
You can multitask, eh?
I'm also trying to finish Diablo. So I'm asking. So if you look at, like, for instance, the library of
Yeah.
the Wii, you compare it to the Switch.
Hmm.
What experiences in terms of the library are missing that made, if you're saying that, like, for instance, it had limited experiences that had limited appeal for casuals. So I think we can all assume that the Switch appeals to casuals largely.
Hmm.
And that's why the sales are so high in such a short time span if you look at, like, the years. But I'm asking, what experiences were on the Wii, or what experiences did the Wii lack that the Switch has to differentiate it, that would make it be less popular to
Okay.
casuals?
If I understand what you're trying to say, I think the answer to that would be the Switch has a wider range of games that the Wii doesn't.
Okay.
That could be
All
maybe
right.
Mortal
Okay.
Kombat. It could be Skyrim. It could be
Whoa! What Mortal Kombat?
the Switch. Well, did the Wii have that?
Yes, it had Mortal
Okay.
Kombat Armageddon, and I think it
Okay.
had the
They had
version
Resident Evil
of
4 as
just.
well. Yeah. I mean, I'm not. I don't really get what you're like I'm trying to answer the question, but I'm not really focusing on the games per se, right? Because I think every Nintendo console has great games. So,
But like
so
you, but I'm
you're
just
talking about
answering your
casual.
question. You understand the point I'm addressing?
I don't. I'm trying
I'm
to answer the question.
addressing. No, no.
What
The point
what
I'm
does the
addressing is
Switch
you
have that
pointed
the
at
Wii doesn't have in
exactly.
terms of games?
So yeah, and you saying that, like, if you put the libraries next to each other, would you say they'd be similar in terms of the
Um,
offerings?
from memory, I would say the Switch is better because the Switch had.
Okay, but then I say, in terms of, if you look at those experiences,
Mhm.
what are the significant experiences that you would say are game changers that were not on the Wii that are on the Switch? Because the only reason I'm asking this question is because of your point to say that people, after playing, like, those two motion control games, they'd be tired of the console because there's nothing else to play. And I'm saying the library of the Wii is very similar to what you have on the Switch. You'd still have all these other Nintendo games, like your Mario Karts, your Mario Galaxies or Odyssey. I don't even remember. I think it was Galaxy on that console. You would still have your Donkey Kong games. You'd still have all your other games that
Yeah, your Wii
Nintendo's known
Party,
for.
Mario Party, Legend of
Yes,
Zelda,
all those games.
Super
So,
Mario.
what experiences were missing on that library that made it less, or did it give you over and above? Because that's what it sounds like. It had stuff that you didn't get on any console before, but you could still enjoy all the primary using those funny controls. You could still, and that's the thing
Mhm.
with Nintendo and innovation. Like, they don't need to
The
stick to
point,
the same
but you
controller.
see, but okay, so I get what you're trying to say.
Yeah,
The, I would say the Switch has more experiences, but I don't think it has like in what you're trying to say better experiences, right?
vastly more.
You could still get Nintendo games on
Yes,
the Wii and the Wii U and the Switch. Yes.
100%.
Hmm.
So
Agree.
my thing is, like, again, so it can't be that, like, you can't judge it to say, well, the games on the Wii were poorer, hence people were less interested than they are on the
No,
Switch.
I don't think I ever made that claim.
No, but like you said that, like, when people have played, like, those motion control games, then they're tired of the console. It doesn't offer anything. Basically, that was my understanding. In which, like, I would doubt that, because all Nintendo consoles have, as long as you're getting those Nintendo games, and those unique Nintendo experiences that you can't find anywhere, they will always have value. So that's my
Okay.
point, is that like significantly there isn't, aside from
Okay.
the
I would
changing
say
of the
this. Okay, I
gimmick.
think I get what you're trying to say now.
Yeah.
What I would say to that response is, um, the a vast number of casual people bought the Wii,
Yeah.
and they bought it because of the motion controls. They didn't get the N64, they didn't get the GameCube, because if it was the games, they still would have bought they still would have bought the GameCube. GameCube had amazing games, but it didn't. They bought the Wii based on its gimmick. Now, once you've bought the gimmick, well, you gotta explore. You gotta see what's good, right? It's the same way how if you subscribe to Netflix. I mean, I just subscribe to Apple TV to watch some shows. I'm exploring the
Yeah.
other shows. Like, I'm not just gonna stop there, right? So yes, by default, you're gonna end up buying. You're gonna end up playing these other games like Super Mario Galaxy,
Yeah.
Super Smash Brothers, Brawl, Wii Fit, Donkey Kong Country, blah blah blah. All these games. However, what's going to happen is it's picking up dust. Have you ever heard people say this is like, oh, my Wii's picking up dust? Like it became, I mean, at least in Europe, I know it became a common thing. All my friends had a Wii, and it was all picking up dust. It wasn't the main console to use.
But
And
yeah.
occasionally, when a Nintendo big game came out, they'll probably buy it. But in terms of ratio of games to like Xbox and PlayStation, they
Yeah.
didn't really have that much. So I say this
So
to say, once you have the product, you
yeah.
will buy games for it here and there. Like, I mean, I bought the
Yeah.
Wii U for Smash Brothers, but I also bought Bayonetta. I
Okay.
played it for like 2 hours and I stopped.
All right. Cool. So my thing is, again, like, and you just brought up a point actually that I actually didn't. I don't know why I didn't think about this earlier. Is that and like I've heard so many people say the same thing about the Switch. Like, it's always in my drawer unless the next Zelda or the next Mario game comes out. Otherwise, it's just picking up dust. So like, and I find that funny because this that sentiment is shared again across the way, again just showing the similarities in between Nintendo consoles. But what Nintendo has done is, what you call them sort of being pushed out is them carving a space that is their own, that cannot be, you can't muscle them out of their space because they're the third place. So you either choose between a PlayStation and an Xbox, but you will always have your Switch or your Wii. And that's how the Wii defeated both the PS3 and the Xbox, and that's how the Switch defeated the PS4, Xbox One, and is still kicking ass today. And whatever the Switch 2 comes out, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to carve a space between the two because they're doing a very different arms race to what Nintendo's doing. Nintendo's arms race has always been about innovation and finding a space for themselves to fit, not to try and see who can make the bigger gun between them and the other guys. They're not in the dick measuring contest that Microsoft and Sony have been stuck in for the last 20 years.
Okay. Um, so there's a few things there. Nintendo have
Yeah.
carved up a space for themselves. This
Yeah.
is true. But that space is based on gimmicks.
It
That's
doesn't
how.
matter. It works.
Well,
Like,
hold on.
you can call
Well,
it
hold on.
gimmicks.
Hold
Yeah.
on. It's based off gimmicks. So when
Yeah.
we talk about the Wii, the reason why, a large reason why, a lot of people bailed for the Wii U also was because that consumer just didn't really give a shit anymore. I know like this is subjective again, but many individuals got the Wii and they played the games, but they weren't interested in the Wii too. They just didn't care. The gimmick was done. It was fun. It was cool. It's finished now. The DS as well was pretty much the exact same thing. Think about it. The DS and the PSP went head to head, but did they really go head to head? Because the PSP was a traditional handheld console. The PSP was supposed to go up against a Game Boy Advance sequel. Nintendo did the same thing that they normally do, which is, nope, we're not gonna compete head
Well,
to
they,
head. We're gonna do use a gimmick. And now
yeah, well, but don't
let me tell
forget
you about the
that.
DS.
Oh, but wait, like the thing is, the DS came out before the PSP, so it's not a matter of like they decided to innovate
No, and that's
before.
fine. But my point still
So you
stands that
can't say
it's
that they did that because they didn't. They were
no. I
pivoting.
don't mean it that way. But like, I mean, Nintendo knew Sony was making a PSP. Like, it wasn't like they
Well,
didn't
I
know.
mean, it could have been anything. It was
I
speculation,
mean,
but
if Sony was making a PSP, like they knew
so
it wasn't gonna be a gimmick handheld,
well,
right?
I mean,
Come on,
They
like
like
nobody expects a gimmick from PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 6.
I
Or
mean
even
like
Xbox.
they've released gimmicks before. It's not like
Yeah,
Sony
but no
has
one
not
expects the PS6
eye
to be like a
toys and all
gimmick
that.
console, right? But
Yeah, well, I
the
mean,
point still stands though, because okay,
yeah.
so think about it. So the PSP and the Nintendo DS didn't go head to head because the DS was, it was a gimmick, which was fine, right? Okay, that's
Well,
cool. It was
it
a gimmick.
played games,
No, no,
did it
but
not?
hold on,
It was a
But
handheld and you
here's
could
the
play
key thing, yeah.
games.
The DS having a touchscreen was during the phase or when touchscreens were the new craze, right? Everyone has a touchscreen. Kids wanted to have a
But
touchscreen.
like it was
Apple,
actually an old craze by then. Like touchscreens had
no,
been
but
around
but,
for a
but for
minute.
games,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean they innovated again instead of
yeah,
just giving you the
exactly. Yeah, so
basic
it was a
controls.
handheld that
But you
could
could
play.
still play conventional controls if
No,
you
no, but
want.
hold on. No, but hold on. So I got the DS, right?
Yeah,
And once again, Nintendo did what they did well. They advertised it really well. I could have a pen, which I could use as a finger to touch a dog and to pet the
yes,
dog and feed the
yeah,
dog. It was a level of
100%.
interactivity that I thought was great. They did well with
Yeah,
advertising. My friends got it. I got it. They
yeah,
showed me playing Metro Prime Hunters with the touchscreen. Oh, better accuracy, better accuracy. I was able to see games and look at the map at the bottom screen.
yeah.
Perfect. Like there were so many things that they advertised really well. Nintendo was great at advertising. Once I bought that console and I played all these games, in a few months' time, it was done. The touchscreen was not innovative in the sense that, oh, it's better to play first person shooters with a touchscreen than it is with a traditional controller. That
It's
just went out the way straight away.
interesting. It's far more interesting and it's different.
It's different and interesting, which is a
Yeah.
gimmick. But then once it's done, it's done. It's the same thing. It's
Did
the
it
same
work?
thing. No, 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 hold on. It's the same thing with the Quest. The Quest was
Did
interesting and cool. And then after like 2 hours, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm done now. It's a
did it
gimmick.
work?
What do you mean did it work? Yeah, it sold people, but this is
Did
the
it
second.
work? Did it make Nintendo billions?
Yes, it did, but like,
Okay,
okay, but
so where's the so what are we critiquing then?
but hold on. They also said, hey, listen, we have a microphone in the console. So if you want to talk to the
Yes.
console or blow, some of these games, you can do these things. And I
Yeah.
said, yes, I'm gonna get a DS for these things. I got it, yeah. And then guess what? I didn't get a 3DS because the gimmick was done. Once you try the gimmick once, it's finished, it's over. We're done here. There's nothing else to
Okay.
talk about.
So but like
That
so
is
how is it
why
so
I,
it being finished, Tai, what does it achieve? What does it take away from Nintendo? How does Nintendo lose?
no, 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 but it's a grander picture. Okay. The grander picture is
Yes.
Nintendo does these gimmicks and these gimmicks sell well, but they're very
Yes.
one and done gimmicks.
And they come up with something else. So what's the
And they
issue?
come up with something else. Now, Phil said something that was very, very interesting, which was, I think I told you before, where he said, I think the industry is now at a point when it's matured and it knows exactly what it is. So all these gimmicks and stuff isn't really going to work. We've kind of seen it now, with the new inventions, touchscreens, microphone, all this kind of stuff. Gamers do not want to play a controller that has a microphone where they can talk to people in the game or whatever it is. They don't want touchscreens on the phones, or sorry, on the controllers. We just
Yeah.
know what the industry is now. That's why the new Sony PlayStation controllers just improves on what it is, which is aka haptic feedbacks, right? That just makes sense. So, and the reason why I know Nintendo thinks this as well, and listen, when the Switch 2 comes out, we'll find out, is because they could have given the
So
Switch 2 two screens, like the
okay,
DS. But wait, they didn't give it two screens because they knew the two screens was a gimmick and it wasn't worth it. Number one.
okay.
They could
So
have given the Switch touchscreen controls where people can, play with the touchscreen and do different
mhm.
things with it. They didn't. None of the games use touchscreens like that. It's just back to traditional console. In fact, the Switch is the most Nintendo-like console that's the closest to the Nintendo 64. It's the most traditional console I've ever released. The only AKA gimmick is you can play on the handheld, which itself doesn't actually change the way you fundamentally play the games. It doesn't change the way you play Zelda. It doesn't change the way you play Metro Prime. There's no where controller support. It's just there. And the additions, aka you can remove the controllers and play, with the thing. These are additions. This is what Sony was doing with the Rumble Pack, with the shoulder buttons. We're giving you additional things to play the
mind
game.
you, Rumble was invented by
And
Nintendo.
Nintendo, yeah. Yeah, no, no, you're right there. But like they're giving you additional things to play. I think this.
Another Nintendo gimmick that became a staple. But go on, Tai.
Yeah. I know. Um, and that's the point here because when you now say to yourself, okay, well, what's the Switch 2 going to bring in? If it's and this is the part where I do not know. This is why I put them into the bracket of 80 million to 130 million because I just don't know what's gonna do. They could come up with something new that's interesting. However, I don't know if they can because I think the Switch itself is an indication that like yeah, the Switch is not a gimmick. The idea of being able to like to play
It's
your
a huge gimmick. Like I don't understand how you separate between gimmick and not gimmick. The whole gimmick is that it's a hybrid console. Nobody makes hybrid console.
no, because
It's the world's first
The
hybrid
Switch
console.
itself doesn't change the way you fundamentally play any game.
But
The
like that's what I'm saying
the,
to you is that like look,
the Switch itself is literally
yeah.
a handheld that you can
So
plug to your TV. There's nothing
so
new
what
here.
was the Wii?
The Wii was a
So like
motion
did you have to
control
play all
console.
games with motion controls?
Yeah, every game Nintendo made was centered around that with the two
But
controllers,
you could
the
still just
nunchuck and the
play.
controller.
No, you could just play games with the nunchuck, like with Twilight Princess. You could play, or you could play with the Pro controller. How is that different from these little Joy Cons that you
Yeah,
get
but
with
that
the?
wasn't what there was marketing though. That's not core to your marketing, right?
Well, they were marketing like the motion control primary games, like for instance your tennis and whatever for that,
There is no,
but
but
they
yeah, but like
still
if
had
you ask,
traditional
yeah,
games.
but if you ask the average consumer, the average, the sorry, the casual fan, can
Yeah,
you get a GameCube controller and play with it? Can you get a Pro controller? They don't know these things. All they just know is nunchuck and normal controller. I went
yeah,
to
you
a
can
guy's,
still use the
I,
nunchuck as a controller.
I
It's a
went to a
fully
guy's
functional
house and he
controller.
was using the fucking the nunchucks and the Wii remote as a controller, and it's just and
You
the
can.
truth is the truth becomes very clear is that these people don't even know what the hell's going on, and they don't because they're casuals, right? They just
You
bought
could
the
play
Wii U,
Smash
it was fun.
Brothers. Was it cool?
But it's an inferior way to play.
That's your opinion, though.
Wait,
Like
wait,
it's
no. Playing Smash Brothers with the fucking Wii remote is not a superior way to play. It's not a better way to play with a normal controller.
hey, like you can play it with Joy Cons if you want. Bottom line is that you get to play. I'm being serious. Like this guy.
Oh, that's hilarious.
You can't like. Is it not this guy?
Oh Jesus Christ! So I know,
Uh,
yeah. Like, listen, my friend would come over, and when the GameCube controller was broken, he would play with
yeah,
the nunchucks, and he hated it, and he was
exactly.
like, "Well, it's not fair," and I was like, "Yeah, it's not fair." Oh, sorry
But
for
it works. But it's Nintendo made it work.
yeah,
Did they not?
but let's be clear: the Switch, aka gimmick, is not in comparison to what the Wii and what the Wii U was, right? The Switch is a more traditional console that actually made those hardcore gamers who left the Wii, because even though Nintendo sold well more consoles, those hardcore gamers left the Wii because they're like, yeah, this ain't really for me, and they left the Wii U because the hardcore gamers knew what the fuck a Wii U was. Now the casuals didn't know it, but the hardcore gamers knew what it was. What they didn't get the Wii U because they're like, yeah, it's not for me. But the Switch itself was like, no, this is basically a handheld sequel to the Game Boy Advance. It's not a DS, and the reason why we know this because Nintendo didn't put two screens on the Switch. They knew it wasn't going to work. They knew the gimmick was done. They didn't make it touchscreen focused because they knew the gimmick was done. What they did to that was really effective was, hey guys, you can remove the Joy Cons and you can play with your friends. However, it's still a traditional console. This is not the way you should be playing it. The games are gonna be full on handheld, full on GameCube like.
Okay.
This is the console you're looking for.
Okay. So let me ask you: what does the Wii have in common with the PlayStations, the Xbox One, or the PS4?
Nothing.
So how is it traditional console?
No, I said the Switch is a traditional console.
Sorry, not the Wii. Sorry, the Switch. What does that have in common with the Xbox and the PS4?
There's no gimmick.
What does it have in common with those two consoles?
It's more of a traditional console. That's why, like, what do
In
you
what
mean?
way? In what way is it similar?
It's Nintendo focusing on just making core games. No games with a gimmick. The
There's
marketing
a
isn't
lot
the,
of oh, there's a
the
lot
market.
of gimmicks. Like the whole Joy-Con thing is a gimmick because you could play Splatoon, you could play all these competitive games using little tiny Joy-Cons in the at the park and the native screen. You could play a multiplayer game with a tiny little controller and a small
Yeah, but
screen.
that doesn't change the way you fundamentally play the game, though.
It does.
No,
because you
no, it
can't do that
doesn't.
with an Xbox.
No, 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 no.
Can you take your Xbox to the
No,
middle of
no.
the park and be
If we're saying the gimmick for the Switch is the fact that it's a handheld hybrid situation, yeah, okay,
yes,
that
that's
is
the
a gimmick.
gimmick.
But what I'm
That
saying is
is the
that
gimmick.
yeah, but my
So
point
how
is
is that
that
gimmick
my
traditional?
point no, my point is that gimmick is closer in stance to what the Xbox is and the PlayStation is, as opposed to what the Wii and the Wii
I
U is.
disagree because the Wii you couldn't take out of your house.
Yeah, but
That
okay,
makes it
okay.
far more similar to the Xbox and the PS4 than it is to the Switch. Never before could you take a home console and play it anyway.
No, no, but
That
like
is a
no,
completely different thing.
no, but that'll be a mute point because it's already a hybrid, right? So it's not really like I wouldn't count that because we're already saying it's a hybrid console.
Yes,
Yeah, well,
correct.
yeah,
So
we're saying it's a
it's
hybrid. Yeah, we're
immediately
saying it's a hybrid
like
console.
yes, but like by the fact that it's that disqualifies it from being in any way conventional or related to conventional consoles. The closest thing to it was like these Windows PCs and Steam, which were home computers.
Uh, okay.
I get what you're saying, that it's the closest thing to like away from motion controls that Nintendo did.
Okay, so yeah, so my point here primarily is when you look at the motion controls, it was such a huge departure from what anyone expected
Correct.
that
And it rejuvenated
Nintendo
Nintendo's
created a whole different separate market that you just put it somewhere else.
100%.
Then they came out with the Wii U, which was a complete departure again from what Xbox and PlayStation were doing.
Agreed.
Yeah, the Switch is a departure. My point here is really more focused on the fact that Nintendo was able to bring back the hardcore, not just because based on the gimmick or the of the hybrid model, which was important, but the fact that like it seemed like Nintendo was returning back to form to what they know best, which is just hey, let's just make good games. Let's create a home console that isn't focusing on motion controls or any touchscreen. It's a console where we're actually giving you a traditional pad again to play Nintendo games in a traditional way.
So you're saying people were like they'd abandoned Nintendo to go away.
Sorry, come again.
Okay, like what you're asserting is that some form of hardcore audience left Nintendo because they were not happy with the motion controls. Am I correct
Yeah,
with
there
that
was a
assessment?
departure.
So
Yes.
then they came back because of the Switch. Is that what you are alleging? That the Switch brought them back basically to the Nintendo fold?
Yes.
And I think to me that is the most outrageous point because where would they go?
What do you mean? Where would they go? Where would
Where
Nintendo
would
fans
they
go from the
go?
Wii? They went to Xbox and PlayStation.
They already have an Xbox and PlayStation.
No, 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 no. Okay, wait. How did Xbox go from? Okay.
Like you do
What? Okay.
understand what I'm saying here is that
Okay.
like if you
Hold
look at
on. Just a quick one.
yes,
Yeah. When the GameCube sold 23 million units or 20 million units, yeah. Um, and then the Wii
yeah,
sold 100 and whatever million units. Are we
yes,
saying that difference was just casuals?
no. What I'm
Okay.
saying is that very simple. This is a very simple point, and you answered this at some point in time early on in this discussion. And I said this just when I was making my previous point that Nintendo has carved a niche for themselves where they are the third place. They've done this through value proposition. They've placed themselves in a niche that, and you don't want to acknowledge this. I don't know why you're so anti acknowledging Nintendo's niche, that they're in a spot where you can have a Xbox, you can have a PlayStation, but you still want a Nintendo. It's not either or. And they've done this not just in terms of their library, not just in terms of their marketing or their gimmicks. They've done this by making sure that even in terms of like how much you pay for the devices, it puts them in a different bracket than what you would want for a home console, etc. So they're in such a niche that they don't need to compete. That's the whole point, is that they never need to compete directly with Xbox and Microsoft ever again. They've since the Wii, they've created that niche and they will always have that niche because no one can do what they do. No one offers what they offer on their platforms. There is no
Okay.
gamer that will now decide, you know what do they got to lose? Because again, everyone has come to see Nintendo as the option that whether I have an Xbox or a PlayStation, I will have a Nintendo.
First of all, we didn't get to the pros of Nintendo on how they can keep the market, and one of them is the fact that they have that niche. One of them is the fact that from a consumer friendly
Yeah.
proposition, casual friendly, Nintendo has that. However,
Hmm.
this is where the difference lies, right? Nintendo's created that niche you said based on price. We don't even know if the Switch is going to be 400. I would argue that if it's 350, cool. I think most casual people are willing to pay that much for it. However, when you get into the 400 euro territory, people start to think, okay, is this really worth it? There's a reason why the 3DS was cut by half price by Iwata because it wasn't selling. People thought it was so expensive. There's a reason why the GameCube had to keep cutting its price down to attract people because people thought it was so expensive in comparison to the competition. So Nintendo has created a niche, which is true. That's fine, and they will probably dominate the handheld space. However, there's factors that could see them lose market share.
Okay. All I'm saying is that yeah, it'll be interesting to see what those factors are because I don't see.
But hold on, wait. So Nintendo releases the Switch 2, and it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It does the exact same thing as the Switch 1.
Mhm.
There's no extra gimmicks. It's just the Switch 2,
Yeah.
with better graphics. Xbox comes out with a hybrid handheld again, whatever, just like the Switch, except it's more powerful, plays all Xbox
Mhm.
games, plays all PC games, and whatever. Sony comes out with the PlayStation Portal, which is another
Yep.
hybrid, if you want to call it that as well. It plays all PlayStation 5 games and maybe PlayStation 4 games and has access to all the libraries, PS2, like with their Game Pass subscription or whatever it is. You don't
Yeah.
think Xbox and PlayStation, you don't think Nintendo's looking at Xbox and PlayStation and thinking, oh shit.
No, not really, because they don't really make the same type of thing. They don't do the same thing. They do very different things. People don't look to Nintendo to play PlayStation and Xbox games. And that's another thing that like when we were
But
talking on
I
Monday
mean,
I
like
wanted to say
you're
like
saying that.
nobody does. Like that's why you can bring up third party all you want, but Nintendo has survived without third party since the whatchamacallit, the N64. They don't need third party.
Yeah, but
And
wait,
they
like
yeah.
wait, hold on. But the N64 was they didn't see that as a success. So that's
No, they
one.
saw it as a success. It wasn't like
N64. No, it didn't.
yes, the N64 succeeded against like in terms of like who else did better than
No, 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 no,
Nintendo
no. They weren't happy
in
with. I
that
mean,
generation.
what do you mean? Sony fucking destroyed them.
No, no, I'm not talking about Sony. I'm like they did like in terms of like how shit like the whole thing was, like how what a clusterfuck. They brought that back. They considered that a success. Like it did well, and generally it's considered to have some of the most successful games of that generation. Otherwise, they would have just canned it and moved on to the next thing like Sega, and they didn't. So I mean, like yes, like was it diminishing returns by the time they released the GameCube, which was in every way better than what the Nintendo 64 was, but didn't do as well? No, definitely like the GameCube was a huge step down from the N64. That was, in my opinion, like a true failure for them. That's why
So
they
like
did.
I have some like a report here and it said that like the Nintendo 64 was a great success in the United States. However, in Japan and Europe, it underwhelmed.
Yeah.
I could send you the links to that. I don't
No, no,
Nintendo
no.
will not.
I agree with that, but like in it did not fail. They don't consider
No, no,
it a
no, no. They
failure.
don't. Yeah, I never said they considered it a
Um,
failure, but
like they
it
consider,
didn't meet
like for
the
instance,
expectations.
if you read up on the GameCube, they will say that it underperformed. They will relate like they there's no positive sentiment about the GameCube
Yeah, no,
or
100%. I
the
mean,
Wii U
well, the
for that.
GameCube like did like
No, but okay,
season
but like
one.
make your
Yeah,
point. But like yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, well, you were making the point. My point was specifically you saying that they didn't need third party and they've done well
They
without third
didn't.
party.
Like yeah,
But
like and
but I
I'm
would say
saying
that
to you, they've gotten to
the
the point
reason
that
why
they've
they've
gotten so
managed
good
to
at it.
avoid third party. Well, first of all, with
Yeah.
the N64, one of the reasons that hurt them was third party, right? Not having Square Enix, not
Well, that
having
is yes, because they were still competing directly with Sony.
yeah, okay. And then with the GameCube as well, same thing. They were competing, and then they
Yes.
didn't have enough third
And then
party
they
yet.
just
And then they moved
changed
to the
the way
Wii,
they
and
became self reliant.
Yeah, and
Like
they
the
moved to
Wii
because
was
because they
completely
moved
based
yeah
on
to
their
a
own.
gimmick.
Yeah,
to
but exactly, but it worked. That's the
No,
point.
no, I'm
Is
not
that it was
denying. I'm
successful.
not. No, we're not talking about the same thing. I'm not denying that it didn't work. It worked.
Okay,
What
so
I'm
what is
saying,
okay?
my
Yes.
point is that the problem with gimmicks is that you need to keep coming up with a new gimmick every
How
single
is that a
time
problem though?
because it's not consistent. What do you mean is that a
But
problem?
like you
What's the
don't need
problem?
to be consistent if innovation works. Why would
No, no,
because all
because you're
consistency will bring
because
is
at this point you're gambling that the innovation is something that the market actually wants,
yes,
right?
yes,
Yes,
that's good. That is good open market competition versus what we're getting like now because everyone is complaining about how stagnant a lot of these businesses have become. Like the one complaint that everybody has and the one example everyone uses will be Apple, that at some point in time you did not know what to expect from Steve Jobs, and now you know exactly what Apple is going to produce, and you saying you prefer the Apple approach of just you know what's the word I'm looking for, um, incremental upgrades, but there's a word for it,
I'm
instead of
saying
innovating and
I'm
coming up with
saying
something
that
brand
the
new.
incremental upgrades is what consumers normally gravitate to, and it's more stable than a situation where you're coming up with something completely brand new. I'll give you an example
So,
here. Apple clearly thought that the Vision Pro was the next thing. Complete flop. If you're
well,
a
because it
shareholder,
cost 23, it cost a ridiculous amount of money. Nobody could afford it.
ridiculous amount or not, it was a
No,
people.
but I mean
Wait,
that
hold
is
on.
like,
Oh wait, they all thought VR was a thing, right? I mean, Nintendo
yeah,
also
but
experimented
VR
with
is
VR.
affordable. There's
No,
affordable
no, but what I'm saying is
alternatives.
that Nintendo also experimented with VR before in the past, right? And in the end,
Long
they
time
had to,
ago
yeah,
for very different
and it
reasons.
flopped for different reasons. Um, Innovation is great, and people should obviously pursue that. My
Yes,
point is that if you're relying on a new console having a new gimmick every time, there's going to be a point, and I
yes.
think Phil was right with this statement where he said, I think the industry is mature now that we kind of know what we want. Now, you can disagree with that statement and say, like, no. I want something new again.
Like Phil
But
has failed
when I
so
ask
many times that
but when I ask anybody
like
about what do you want from a Switch 2, no
yes.
one says, I want something new. I want him to
Well,
try
this is
something
what I'll say
crazy.
to you. Well, and like one of Miyamoto's quotes is that if you ask people, if you go to someone and say, "What would you like to see in a game?" they'll tell you they want to see what's popular at that time. They'll say, "I want to see another GTA," and he says that's why our philosophy is not to do what everybody else does. It's within their DNA. And then I'll ask you this question: so currently, where we're sitting, if you're saying that consumers or the general consumer or the mainstream consumer does not gravitate towards innovation and different ideas, how successful is the Switch right now?
It's extremely successful. One of the most successful consoles.
So why did they gravitate towards it, even though it was marketed as something completely different
They
and
gravitate towards
is
it
still something?
because the Switch made business sense to merge the handheld division and
No, no,
the
no, no.
console
That's not how
division
a consumer thinks. Like, why did the normal person gravitate towards it?
because it's a hybrid console.
It was something new. It was innovation. So
Yeah,
people are not
I agree.
opposed to innovation. People don't. There's like again, like this is this. There's no absolutes here of like people always, and that's what I like about Nintendo. They like to test the like where we think the limits are. Whereas if you gave this to Sony and Microsoft, you'd get the same bullshit forever. It's like since they jumped on to fucking AMD's architecture, we are getting zero innovation in terms of how hardware is.
But hold on, I'm not disagreeing that Nintendo doesn't innovate or Nintendo shouldn't innovate. What I'm disagreeing is that that window of innovation, and this might be my limited knowledge, seems to be getting smaller. That's number one, and
Okay, so
number two, um, the closer they get to normality, the closer they get to competing with Xbox and PlayStation again.
which is what you want to see, which is
No,
not
no,
gonna
no.
happen.
It's not even what I want to see as well. No, no, no. Because when I ask people, do you think? Because remember when the Revolution was announced before the it was called them the Wii, we knew it was going to
Yeah,
be something different. We all knew this, right? So that was there. When the DS was announced, we knew before it came, like it was fully announced, that it was going to be something different. Oh, it's going to have potential touchscreen, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we knew these things. For the Switch 2, which is arriving like probably next March, there is no leaks or reports that it's saying anything. In fact, the rumor people who played or tested the Switch is basically saying like, yeah, it's
Mhm.
the Switch 2, except it's 4K. So is this if this is true, they're getting closer to competing with the other guys again. That's my point. Now, if they come out with some new gimmick or something new, nice and whatever it is, then you know what?
Mhm.
I'm gonna say, yo, they're probably gonna sell 150 million units again. If they don't, my analysis is no, it's problematic now a little bit more because now they're competing more with um the traditional console makers. Because now when Elden Ring 2 comes out, it's gonna be similar to what happened to an extent with the Wii. When I had a choice to play Harry Potter and use the Wii remotes to make spells or to play a graphics better version and just tap the buttons on my console on the PlayStation,
Uh-huh.
what's gonna be more attractive to me? To play to get an Xbox handheld or PlayStation handheld that plays it at 4K 60, or the Nintendo version, which there's no gimmick. I don't want a fucking gimmick. That's gonna give me a what 1080p 30 frames. That's the
Okay.
question.
So, all right, cool. So, like, my question is like, right where we are now, is Elden Ring on the Switch?
No,
Did that hurt Nintendo's business?
no,
Is Call of Duty on the Switch?
no.
Okay, so all these franchises that are not on the Switch are suddenly going to hurt Nintendo by virtue of now having worse versions on the Switch too.
Yes, but context, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like I get what you're saying, but I'm just
Well,
saying that like
well,
if you look
well,
at the
well. Here's the
facts,
context.
because we're looking at just like
Well,
logic in terms of like,
here's the
so
context.
who
Well,
are these
hold on,
consumers that
hold
they
on. Here's
okay?
the context. The Nintendo. When people say Nintendo games, Nintendo doesn't need third parties or whatever it is because Nintendo games are great and everyone's gonna buy them for that. The answer I
Yeah,
give to them is like that didn't happen for the fucking N64 or the GameCube or the Wii U. So let's just drop that.
because that's all they knew back then. Like you now taking we're going back in time and we're saying, well, this is the
No,
only
it's a story.
okay.
Like okay, let me round it up. The games
Like
itself was not enough, right? So because it didn't work
okay.
for the GameCube, it didn't work for the for the Wii U, N64
Mhm.
to an extent, and so what's that's telling us like you know what the console and the markets actually matters, and Nintendo needs to adapt to the consoles and the markets. So the reason why
Have they
Nintendo
done
games
that
are
in the
not
last 10
doing
years?
so the
Okay,
reason why
wait, have they
Nintendo
done that in
games
the
well, hold on.
have
The
they
reason why
done that in
Nintendo
the last
games are not the reason why Nintendo games are not particularly they are important, but the reason why they're not as crazy as everyone makes it seem is because when these consoles come out, these games don't sell all the consoles, right? The reason why the Switch sold so well is because it was a hybrid. If the Switch was just a console that played Nintendo games, it would sell, but it would not sell as much as it did. The reason why the Wii sold so well wasn't because of Nintendo games, it was because the Wii itself was a gimmick. The
so
DS
you
sold
say
so
that
well because it
okay,
was a gimmick.
so how did like then the game like all of Nintendo's like a handheld sell up until that point is because they were all gimmicks.
The handheld the Nintendo was the only one in the handheld market.
No,
There's
they
no
were
other
not. Sega tried to compete, they failed.
Yeah, it was
SNK
shit.
tried to compete,
Yeah,
but
they
like
were
no, no,
yeah, they
no,
were
like
shit.
well, that doesn't matter. Like they had competition, they were just not good at competing. Dude, they put money,
Yeah,
they invested
yes,
money.
yes. Sega was
Sony
shit.
put
Yeah.
money, they failed.
I mean, yeah, Sega was shit. Yeah, I mean,
Yes, and then
the
Sony
Sega Game Gear sold 10 million copies. Yeah, Nintendo was
exactly.
dominant.
Then how much did the Sony Vita sell? 15.
Yeah,
So what
they
is your
failed.
point? Like, well, if your competition can't compete, just like for instance, you could say that Xbox One failed
Yeah,
against
yeah,
PS2
yeah,
because it
yeah, they
was
failed.
shit.
Yeah, yeah, they
So
failed.
what? But like, so what is like? And again, so I'm trying to understand here. So what is magical competition that comes out of nowhere that will
I mean,
suddenly
I'm
change
confused.
things?
Are you okay? I'm confused. Are you trying to say that like when Xbox releases a handheld and PlayStation releases a handheld, there is no competition? Nintendo just owns the handheld market.
So
It's
what do
gone.
you gauge this competition by? If you just say Sega's shit, Sony was shit. So what's the difference now?
I mean, do
They're
you want me to
all
tell you
shit at
why?
making handhelds. never made handhelds.
Well, no, you can't say that because PSP sold 18.5 million copies.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, and then they went to and then the next console was shit.
Yeah.
It sold 15 million copies. So like,
Yeah, but
how
hold
is
on,
that now more
but
significant
we can.
competition?
What I'm saying is that we can look at the market as to why PlayStation Vita failed, and we can also look at the market as
So
to
okay,
why the
so we won't
3DS
look at
didn't do
that
so
when we talk
well.
about the links, the Atari links and the Nomad, or what do you call that, the handheld of this. It
Game
was
Gear,
the Game Gear, yeah.
Nokia.
It was Game Gear in America. It was the Nomad in Europe. But so why won't you look at like the market conditions as to why that failed?
Because I'm talking because the relevance. Sega don't do anything. We're talking about we're talking about Sony
No, but
coming.
no, you can't just dismiss because you know
No,
what I'm trying, because like you're just being dismissive of that, saying it's not competition. I'm saying, what are you basing this on as competition?
no. Wait, no. You're missing
Because
my
these
point.
people have also failed
Nintendo,
at making handhelds
Nintendo
against Nintendo.
defeated the game. Okay, hold on. I mean, we can say why did the Game Gear? Why did the Game Gear fail?
Yeah.
Let's look at why the Game Gear failed. Extremely. Okay, why did the Game Gear fail? Blah blah blah. No, I need a better article than this. I don't think there's any Wikipedia articles. Okay, Game Gear history, release, marketing, declines. Okay, let's see. Before the game gets launched, season will have successful marketers, more mature, optional players in North America, marketing the game gears, have comparisons. Europe and Australia received this due to low delays. Okay, let's look at the decline. Oh, reception. Game Gear surpassed the Atari Lynx and NEC Turbo Express, but lagged far behind the Game Boy in handheld markets. Retrospective reception to the Game Gear is mixed. In 2008, Game Pro listed the Game Gear as the 10th of its list, 10 worst-selling handhelds of all time, and criticized aspects of the implementation of its technology, but also stated that the Game Gear could be considered a commercial success at 11 million units sold. Unlike the Game Boy, the Game Gear rocked the landscape holding position, making it less cramped for human hands. Speaking for DLC. With the AB processor and bright color screen, it was basically the Sega Master System in your hands. How many batteries did we suck dry playing Sonic? So people were saying that the battery life was terrible. By contrast, IGN, the biggest fault was its game library. Its game library sucked when compared to the Game Boy. Since the software was completely lacking compared to its chief rival, which was baited in quality games. It didn't matter that the Game Gear was more powerful. The color screen did not reverse any fortunes. So it seems that the technology wasn't great.
Yeah. So why
They didn't
did
have
the
any games.
okay? So why did the PSP and the Vita fail? Because both of them
Well,
at some point in time died.
I
The
know
PS
that the PSP was successful because it was priced well enough and it had a good amount of games, and I think consumers were looking for something different to the Nintendo consoles, and Nintendo gave Sony gave them that, which I think the God of War release, Uncharted release, and developers were actually willing to kind of make some games for it. When the PS Vita came out, it was completely different. It was expensive. That's number one. Number two, Sony had some kind of memory card situation where each memory card was like, what was it, like €80, $90? It was something ridiculously expensive.
Okay.
So if you
So
bought a PS Vita for like whatever it was, $300, you have to fork out an additional $90 for the memory card, and then to go buy a game. Also, it lacked support from different
so
developers as
but
well.
you do know that like it fell sharply in terms of like Sony's expectations towards the end of its life,
PSP
and
or
that's
PlayStation
why they
Vita?
like the PSP. And I've got here, if you like Google, like PlayStation Portable decline was due to a number of factors, including competition, the rise of mobile gaming,
Yeah,
competition
same thing
from
happened with the
Nintendo
3DS.
DS
Yeah,
and the Wii systems, the lack of exclusive titles. The PSP didn't have a robust library of exclusive games. Slow adoption to digital distribution. The PSP didn't quickly adopt digital distribution, and the high cost of games. Games for the PSP were expensive compared to of course, the competition.
mm-hmm.
PSP was fully closed on. Sorry, the PSP store was closed on the 2nd of July 2021. I know that it had a huge homebrew market and a lot of people were supporting up at the end, but yeah, it prematurely, in terms of like the technology they'd invested in, it died. So
Just a
yeah,
quick
so
one, right?
it wasn't a
Just a quick one. I'm
breakout
reading this,
success.
bro, and
Yeah.
it says that like The Nintendo DS, sorry, Reggie Fils may, however, focused on the experiences of the Nintendo DS. The DS started to become more popular than the PSP early on because it attracted more third-party developers and appealed more to the casual gaming markets. The DS sold more units partly because of its touchscreen and second display. This is kind of my point. Nintendo's really good at marketing to the casual markets because the DS itself was a gimmick, right? It was, oh, two
Okay.
screens, oh, touchscreen, oh, this is perfect. However, if the PS, and I would argue, I'm not the PS Vita, but if the sequel was supposed to be made, which was the 3DS. Yeah, you're right. Vita failed, and we can talk about why it failed. But when we talk about why the 3DS
Dismally.
failed, hmm?
I said dismally. Like what,
Dismally, yes.
15? Like that's like Game Gear numbers.
Yeah, I mean, the Vita is basically Sony's Concord. Is the handheld version of Concord, like hands down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's look
Yeah,
at
no,
okay
I
the
agree. I
3DS
agree.
later the reception. But I think the point is we can look at
Yeah,
why Sony, the PSP didn't maybe do as well as it should have, and why the Vita didn't
yeah,
do as well. And we can look at why the DS didn't do as well, and why the 3DS
good.
didn't do as well. But there's two key things I keep pointing to, which is the reason we can look at why they didn't do well, but the reason why they did so well in the first place was because they were able to appeal to the casual market, and
Yeah,
one of the reasons why was because they always had a new interesting gimmick.
yeah.
So
So,
my point is, if they don't have a gimmick for this one, it's more competition. That's
okay.
why when game industry says, "Hey, listen, Microsoft is bringing out a new Xbox handheld, and so
Yeah,
is Sony," they're saying this on the back of, yeah, it's competition, but we expect the Switch 2 to just be the Switch 2, not a whole new system,
yeah,
just a Switch 2, and they're basing it, and I think they've seen this because I think some reporters have kind of seen the Switch 2 already. If the Switch 2 is just the Switch 2, then it's closer to a normal handheld than anything else. Because if you think about it, the DS and the PSP are farther apart than what people expect the PlayStation Portable PS5 and the Switch 2 to be. They expect them to be much closer together. And when they're closer together, and if the price is high, you have to think about which one you're purchasing.
yeah. No, I don't disagree with you. Um,
I need to make a
uh,
video on this.
I think you raise some interesting points, but like I think the bottom line that I'll walk away with here is that the only thing that I set out to prove tonight was the fact that there is no like the argument of Nintendo sucks is not as definitive as you would like to believe it is. It's actually way more complicated and way more nuanced in terms of how they do business and why they've been, and I said this before, so consistent in this industry that they are actually throughout all ages the only consistent name that still even today is relevant, that was relevant in the 80s, that was relevant in the 90s, the 2000s, and even to today they're still part of gaming. Their history is unprecedented in this industry. They are progenitors, they are innovators, they are, yeah, there's very little that Nintendo within the space has not touched or affected. And I feel that for the next 100 years, even they'll continue to do that. I mean, the company was founded in 1889 or something like that. So I feel that they will always be part of gaming in a super significant way. Um, and again, I think it's them in reinventing themselves all the time that's kept them alive and will keep them alive to the future.
Do you expect a major departure from the Switch 2 in the same way we got a departure from the GameCube to the Wii, or a departure from the Wii to the Wii U? Or do you expect it
Uh,
to be more in line with the Switch 2?
Speculatively, to be honest, I've not been keeping up with the Switch stuff. I'm not really interested because I don't really play Nintendo at all whatsoever. Uh, I'm more of a fan looking from the outside, so I can't give you like a definitive answer like I would if you asked me about Xbox or PlayStation in the past. But I would guess that they're gonna bring something to the table that is because they've done that for every single console that they've released in the last since the actually going back as far as the GameCube, they've done that. They've done something different with the console, so it's going to do something that we're
Do you
not
know?
expecting.
Here's the thing about I, that I think, because I think it's okay to get incremental kind of changes, right? Because even like the Switch's core was obviously hybrid, which is great, and then you can detach the controllers. That is in itself bonuses. I would even say this: the N64 is really close to in terms of style, and I'm still working on this to see maybe if it makes sense. Is that I think the N64 and the Switch are very similar in the sense that it's Nintendo's console where they focus on the core and they give you these extra benefits, right? All these extra things that could actually make the games more interesting from a core foundation point of view. So an example would be they gave you the four controller port, right? You can now play
Yeah.
four with your friends with four people. Now that doesn't,
Oh, excuse me.
bless you,
Sorry.
that doesn't change necessarily the way you play the game, but it adds more
Hmm.
functionality to the way you play the game, right? So Nintendo also say,
Yeah.
hey, with the Switch, you can take off the Joy Cons and play with your friends. Like I think that's similar to the four controller method, right? Then they said, you know what, we're going to give you a joystick in this controller, which is a way to kind of move around. It's going to help you, whatever it is. And then with the Switch, they didn't really do anything like that. I mean, there's a bit of motion controls, but it's not added to it, right? So if you're a developer making a game for the N64, you can completely ignore the joystick, right? It's not really important at all. It's still a controller. It still feels like a controller. Perfect. Whereas something with the Wii, the difference is like, well, now you have this motion controller that developers are trying to, use or trying to force because it's part of the gimmick. The gimmick was, hey, you bought this motion control, you bought this Wii for motion controls, so you need to kind of make it like that, right?
Yeah.
And also it felt different. You're using it with two hands, and you're kind of swinging, and it's just not the same. For the Wii U, yeah, you could argue like, hey, you could stick with the controller side of things. However,
Hmm.
there's someone on the stream. Oh, Tony, what's up? How you doing, man? With the Wii U, you can argue
Yeah.
that even though you could stick to the to the core way of playing games, the Wii U controller was huge. It was so
It
uncomfortable,
was silly.
right?
Like it was silly. Yes, it was a very
It was
silly.
crazy. So like it wouldn't even attract you. Whereas when you
Yeah.
look at the Switch literally gave you a normal controller and just said, yeah, the only difference like is you can take it as a hybrid. So for me, I
Yeah.
think the Switch is closer to the Switch is probably closer to the N64 than any of its predecessors in terms of like the Wii and Wii U
You know
situation.
what's the difference though between those two consoles?
Well,
The Switch didn't suck. Like the hardware for the N64 was impossible to work with. It made it so difficult to program for and to develop games for, and it was poorly documented. Like I understand the frustrations of the devs at the time that decided, you know what, screw it. We'll rather make games for
like Square Enix.
Sony. It's much easier. It's we're gonna get more space. We're gonna be able to do more. We're trying to push the boundary of the industry, and this is not allowing us to do it. And again, Nintendo is also full of shit. Like they were very dictator like at that time. Even though they had competition from Sega, they were still very full of shit. And they prioritized certain devs. And this was another thing where certain like newer devs had an opportunity to finally break out of that mold. So like there were just too many things wrong with the N64. By the time it shipped, the writing was already on the wall because it was way too little, too late. Most of the games that were announced did not ship on time because of how difficult the console was to manufacture for. Cartridges made it super expensive. It was the games cost a good $20, sometimes $30 more than a CD game that you could get on PlayStation. And PlayStation had piracy on its side because games were easy to pirate. A lot of people bought PlayStations. So every single thing that could be stacked against Nintendo, including a crappy system like that, was one of Nintendo's worst developed systems in history. It is actually the worst developed. Yeah, it is. Second, actually, only to the Virtual Boy, which was actually easy to make games for because the Virtual Boy had a huge library of games at launch versus the N64.
Hmm. Okay. All right. So you can actually go at Nintendo a little bit. Yeah, the
Yeah, I
N64
mean,
was
like,
But
It
you
was
see,
a
I think,
disaster.
but I would even say like like, and this is kind of the part I kind of push out. Consumers don't really know these things. They just know that Nintendo games are on Nintendo 64, Donkey Kong, Zelda, Ocarina of
Yeah,
Time.
because they were
And
super popular.
yeah, but the problem is like, when that console doesn't do the numbers that Nintendo expect,
Mm,
that's not like, that shows that like there are factors that are also that Nintendo has to adhere to, aka marketing, aka third party developers, because people can say they don't need those third party developers, and I can even agree. But I would just say the same thing again, which is if they're gonna do this by themselves again, it can't be the Switch 2 again. The Switch 2 will still sell, but I think we're just gonna see more and more of a decline. Because again, I think the reason why the Switch sells so well is because of the hype. It's the gimmick, the hybrid just it catches people's attention. I'm on that. I remember that trailer for the Switch when the Switch first came. It was amazing. It was people
yeah,
playing games
fog.
on the TV, and then out of nowhere, it clicks, and then the guy takes it to the freaking park. I'm like, whoever who was marketing for the
Like,
Switch was doing crazy things.
do you know anyone that uses the Switch on whatchamacallit on their TV? I
Yeah, I
don't.
know a few people. Yeah,
I don't. Like everyone I know just uses it for like handheld. But the whole point was that functionality being there. That's why the what is it? The light. Which one is the one that doesn't plug to the TV has sold
the
so
Switch
well.
Lite. Yeah,
Yeah. So like yeah, man. Like Nintendo is very clever at marketing, but they also know that there's an audience that's looking. Like Nintendo should have been put under by cell phone companies. Like
with
like
the Android mobile
with
games.
the Android and like what they're capable because they can run. You can literally run better games on mobile, and the technology and infrastructure on mobile is forever improving. Like you can play console level games now on these mobiles.
That's why I was
But
yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead, finish your point.
no, I was just gonna say, but it hasn't made a difference to them and their
But you see,
business.
the thing is like the 3DS and the PSP. Like one of the points that's credited with hurting them is mobile games, right? And I've spoken to people about a lot about mobile because people keep saying the same thing, which is people don't want mobile games. They don't want 3D games in the mobile phone. And every single time I say this seems to be sort of true. However, I think it's just a mentality thing. And I always point to the same games again. Call of Duty does extremely well on mobile phones. Like it has like over 100 million downloads. So does I think Warzone. So does PUBG. So does Fortnite. And I point to them like if you want to tell me action adventure games or RPG games do not work on mobile phones, can you explain to me what the fuck Genshin Impact is? Can you explain to me what shit, what's the other one called? Genshin Impact. The RPG one. Well, Zenless Zen
Uh,
Zero is there, and there's another one, Honkai Star Rail. And once I say these games, and
yeah,
once I send them the trailers, they're like, "You're right. These are like Genshin Impact is basically Zelda. Honkai Star Rail is basically a typical JRPG game." I'm like, "Yeah, but these games have millions of downloads on mobile phones. I thought you said gamers want to play these games," and that's why everyone's like, "Yeah, I actually don't know." I'm like, "Well, I know. It's because for some reason." People have this bias that I will not purchase a fully fledged game on or play a fully fledged game on my mobile phone for
yeah.
whatever reason. I don't want to play Resident Evil on my mobile phone, but I don't mind playing a JRPG game on my mobile phone. It's just a disconnect with how people feel. And once that hump is gotten over, I was thinking like, okay, well, I think Nintendo might be a little bit of trouble here if that hump is getting over. But nobody has. Everyone still kind of has this kind of biases towards handheld towards mobile phone games. And until that happens, I think yeah, Nintendo's obviously gonna keep dominating in that space. But I kind of always go back to that same point: is that the gimmick is what sells the consoles, and then by default, the games sell. Because if you look at the Wii and even the Wii U, the games don't sell as much. It's the reason why Nintendo poured all these games to the Switch because they didn't sell on the Wii U, right? So because I mean, no one bought the Wii U. So when the Switch sells well, or when Nintendo consoles sell well, Nintendo games sell well. But what determines if a Nintendo console sells well? It's not the games, at least from what we've seen. What determines if Nintendo console sells well is a gimmick, and if that gimmick is great, then perfect. They've won. Um, but if it's the same gimmick as before, I don't know if it sells the same.
I go tell that to Xbox that like consoles actually sell games. Uh, I think they need to hear that, like, because yeah, they're busy. They've got all Phil's got a whole bunch of pie in the sky.
I
But
heard
anyways,
rumor that Halo is gonna be on the Switch.
like I just want them to put it on PlayStation. I just wish they could just do it. Like, just do it. Just put fucking Halo on PlayStation, dude.
So
Like
everybody would know what the
that would just
story is.
end it tomorrow. Like any fans that Xbox had, it will just be like, oh, okay, it's
Yeah,
a we the
I
writing's on the
still know
wall.
a guy, and he still keeps does it like I don't understand because the goalpost just keeps getting moved back, and he was still saying, "I still think there's some games that won't go." I'm like, how? How? Why are
No,
you thinking this?
I just want them to do it. Like they're just buying time now. Because I know Sarah Bond is pushing for this because to her this whole nonsense, the whole console thing doesn't make any sense to her. She's just seeing a product and like you are limiting your product because of a set consumer group. And like Phil, I can see him going great trying to explain to her, no, no, no. Like you have to understand that this is how this business. Like no, like just do it. And I just want them to do it. Just listen to her and just do it because she wants to see this. Like do it. Just
Yeah,
put
yeah. I think she's.
one. I want them to do it and then just break the whole thing at once and then it's over. And then geez, then the last of the Xbox fanboys can just shut the fuck up and then it's done. Then
Mm,
just bury it, dude, so we can move on. And then because well, a couple of things are gonna happen is that Sony's entire business is gonna change. Like the day that that is announced, you are never gonna see effort from Sony again. Like everything that comes out from Sony is going to, in some way or another, I'm not saying they're not going to make quality games, but they're never going to go out of their way to impress their consumer. That's what I mean by effort. Is that they're never going to cut the price to undercut competition. They're never going to do anything to put the consumer first because there'll be no prerogative for them to do so whatsoever.
I would agree there because I think that's I think we see the best position when there's competition. The the part of me that oof, okay, let me think about this. Because I'm trying to think, do I fully agree or do I just 80% agree? Here's why I said 80%. A part of PlayStation, they might not need to impress a consumer, but they still need to make money of those consumers. So I'm thinking,
Yeah, and they are gonna, regardless.
that they're still going to have to release the AAA Spider-Man
Yes,
games and the God of War games, and
yes,
if they want to charge $90, they can.
that's my point.
But
Exactly.
something that what was this guy's name again? Zelnick said was that when you increase, it says that when they increase the prices of all their games, consumers were willing to buy the games
Yes,
at a higher
absolutely.
price. However, he's like other games that were less known suffered a lot. So it's like if you're like a Immortals of AVM, that 70 price tag kills your fucking game. It's like all the sales are just fucking no one buys it
No.
and then it sucks. But if you're like a God of War, you can probably get away with it. So I wonder if Sony, yeah, they might do that, but I don't know if there's gonna be some hesitation to be like, you know what, $80 per game.
Bro,
That
they're
make
charging people like how much for a console that does jack shit? Like, like I've been like just watching the comparisons in the last week in terms of like this PSSR and the PS Pro, and I was just laughing my ass off. Like, how can like these people they will pay for this? They were happy to display their console. It does this is the most useless increment in the history of useless increments. Nintendo doesn't make this many useless increments of their consoles.
hmm, okay. So I'll put it this way: you think Sony just becomes more like Nintendo then? They just they just
I
become
think
like
they will just yeah, just they will do what which is unfortunate, but they're just gonna scalp their fans for whatever they can get. And it's not gonna matter to them in terms of the size of their market to a degree. It's just gonna be like, well, we can always just up the price of the product.
okay, fair enough. Anything
And
else you wanna say? Any other
nah, nah,
interesting
dude, I
points?
think we had a pretty thorough discussion. I think we wrapped up any sort of leftover points. And again, I wasn't in disagreement. I just didn't like your tone. You were very disrespectful.
Yeah, I was. Fuck them niggas.
But
Oh,
in essence, I agree with like all your points. I think they come from a very well. They're not from a fanboy perspective. They're very well informed, and even your guesses are very well educated guesses that make sense within the context of what we're looking at in the market.
mm.
Does Nintendo want to go innovation, or do they just want to Nvidia power up? But if the thing is the power of the PS Pro, they have to innovate, dude. You can't, like, because that tells me that your console cannot, like, the Switch 2 for me should not be less powerful than the Series S.
Hmm. Ooh. But then I guess that leads to the next point, which is price, right? Because if they do that,
Exactly.
it's gonna be expensive. That's what I was telling my friend.
That's
Like this guy knows a huge Nintendo fan. He said he was like, if they do 400, that's gonna be a problem. And if they even go towards 450, he's like, ugh, like that's not gonna be a good market for because the casuals don't care about. I guess my point is the casuals are very flexible. They're not that crazy about Nintendo like that. Like they know
yeah.
them as a good maker. But if you're telling the casual gamer, yeah, spend 450 on a handheld, they're gonna balk at that and say,
No,
yeah, I think I'll wait for a sale. Then if Nintendo doesn't do a sale,
no, it does.
well, I mean, the 3DS suffered that thing as well. They said that the 3DS isn't selling, so we have to cut the price down. And
So so here's the thing, right? Nintendo typically doesn't lose money on hardware. I think the only console I remember them losing money on was the N64.
GameCube as well, I
Um,
think.
okay,
I
that's
think
well, yeah.
GameCube,
they cut the price later though with
yeah.
the GameCube. They
No,
didn't
but,
cut
but
it
but I
out of the
think
gate.
GameCube was the last console that they said they were going to
Oh,
lose
they
money
lost
on.
money.
They
Yeah.
were like, yeah,
Okay.
we're not doing this shit again.
Yeah. So I think they might, if but again, but then again, if it's PS Pro level, it's totally feasible that the console will be cheap. I don't see it being that expensive. It's PS Pro with maybe some version of DLSS and some of that Nvidia goodness. Look,
I,
it could work, but I just don't know how forward scalable that is. But so, yeah.
I think if they do I think if it's PS4 Pro, I think that's decent. I think what pushes the price up is the parts in the sense of like we're making it into a small handheld. So that's going to
Um,
cause some issue as opposed to just
uh,
manufacturing it in a larger scale.
does Nvidia have a series of maybe mobile only cards?
No idea. I
I,
don't think so.
because I know, like for instance, with my Rogue Ally, it uses the Z1 Extreme, which are like made. They were made for like small laptops, like your those
Hmm.
mini whatever books. Yeah, and then they brought them into these consoles. So do they have a class of like what they have in the Switch? That was a mobile. Let me see. NVIDIA.
Oh,
Sorry,
well, look
I
at this.
know.
There. It
Were you
says the
planning?
It says the PS4 Pro launched in November 2016 for $400. Um, so turning the PS4 Pro, I mean, so that's going to be cheaper now based on technology, right? That's a
Way
simple.
cheaper. Like
Hmm.
the
However,
PS4 Pro basically is the power is more or less the same level as the Series S because it's got a 4 teraflop processor. The difference is the what is it, RDNA? The chip inside there is the same one that's on the Xbox Series X. So with them, of course, they're not going to put a chip that modern. I'm assuming that the chip's power is going to be somewhere between a PS4 Pro and actually no, yeah, I suppose yeah, between a PS4 Pro and an Xbox One X.
yeah, but then I guess the point that like here's the part that I has been thinking is yeah, it's going to be more powerful and it should be cheaper as well. However, when you try to port something to a smaller version, the price increases, right? And then you have to consider battery life and all that kind of stuff now. So could they do 350? I think if they 350 is like the perfect number. I think they'll get away a lot with that. However, you can only do. I don't know if you can do. I don't think they want to do 350. Like the Switch is 350, and they haven't even decreased that price at all. I don't see that happening. I think they're gonna go like towards the 400 mark, which is I guess 380, 390 is okay.
Which
But
Switch is 350? But isn't that the LED? What is it? The OLED
yeah,
version?
no, I think the Switch prices was always 350, and I think the LED
Let's
one,
see.
OLED one was 400.
Switch.
The Switch OLED is 400, and the Switch itself is 350 till this day.
Where? Did you send me
Nintendo,
something?
no,
Oh, I thought you said it was there. Switch OLED. US dollars.
how much is it saying? Close to 400, yeah.
Ah, should it's giving me in rands. Oh yeah, it says the OLED. It says 349. This is on Nintendo's website.
For the OLED,
Yeah, 349.
so how much is the normal Switch?
Uh, Switch is. I'm on their website. See the OLED, they advertise the price up front. The Switch, I don't see the price.
Oh, we just getting screwed over in Europe. Let me see.
You
Google.it.
guys are getting fucked. But you guys are in the same boat. Like you're actually in a better position than we are. We are getting super fucked because we don't have as much demand as you guys. I don't give a price here. Let's
This is
see.
weird because on like in Smith's, like this is a shop where we buy consoles. The Switch is 300 euros for like just a normal Switch. Okay, okay, my bad then. It's 300 euros.
US price.
Okay, it's 300 euros, and the OLED is three. Yeah, okay, yeah, okay, there it is. The OLED in some parts is like 360, and the Switch price is like 300 to 320. So it kind of varies between that. Okay, 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 okay. My bad.
No, this thing is
Yeah.
fucking me up. It's just I need to change regions. It's just giving me rands. I need
Okay.
to actually go to a store. But okay, but yeah. So the
Yeah,
pricing
yeah,
is yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I think they could do 360, 370 for the
yeah. But they're not gonna make it. OLED is gonna be expensive to do this. I doubt it's gonna be OLED.
What chances do you think they'll release? I mean, they won't do this, but what do you think they'll release two versions?
Not out the gate. Nintendo doesn't. They don't. Only
They,
Microsoft is
they don't want
just.
to confuse consumers.
Hey, let's just release two consoles out of nowhere. Like it's gonna work,
Hmm.
right, guys? Yeah, I
Okay,
doubt.
all right, man. Good. That was a good chat. What are you doing
Always,
later on tonight? Are
always.
you playing games?
Yeah, dude. Like I've got no sleep now. Like when you actually like, I saw your message. I was napping. So now I'm just gonna see if I can't push through some. Actually, I've got stuff downloading on my Xbox, so I'm going to do some Steam hunting, some sale hunting on Steam.
I was gonna get Baldur's Gate 3.
You haven't got that yet.
No, I haven't bought it yet, and I think maybe this might be the time because of the Steam sales. But I also wanted to like, I really want to play the
Yeah,
Cyberpunk DLC, but
yeah.
I told you like I played on Stadia and that thing shut down, so I, I lost the game. But I just
But you
want to
know
play
that you can
the
go
story again.
get your progress. The guy did it for Red Dead 2.
No, oh yeah, no, you can, but that was years ago, right?
Yeah,
So
you're
yeah,
right.
they've kind of
But
closed it down now, and I'm just like,
yeah,
fuck.
just start over from scratch. It's worth
I
it.
hate playing games over again,
No,
but I
but the
think I'm
thing
not
is,
gonna
when
have a
you
choice.
played it, you played the first version of that game, dude. It's day and night. It's completely. I remember because I started my first playthrough when it got the game just released, and then my second, third playthrough came out maybe after like the fourth or fifth update, and it was a completely different game. Day and night. I
Hmm.
promise you, you won't recognize some of that game.
Okay, and I guess I'll purchase it along with the DLC then, and then
I
I mean
highly
I'm also
recommend it.
gonna play it on my PC as well, so I guess graphics will be better.
Oh, okay,
It is
definitely.
truly one of the best games of the last gen. Like I think Cyberpunk and Baldur's Gate 3, I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
Elden Ring in there as well. Have kind of like they've kind of
it's
like
on my it's my top game of this generation. The series PS5 generation. It's the best
mm,
game in my opinion that's been released. above
Okay.
Baldur's Gate, because Baldur's Gate is also one of those games that's fucking hard to play. Yo,
Hmm.
I quit. Like I'm not even. Just these other enemies frustrated me, and I just dropped it, and I never got back.
Okay. All right then.
Anyways, I know. Take care.
Yeah, I'll speak to
I
you soon,
shall
man.
see you. I know. I'll probably like yeah. If you're free sometime over the weekend, we can maybe squeeze in another chat. But I really want to try and put in some work. I bought that thing that Luke said, that Clip Champs.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna play around with it this weekend.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good then. I have
Cool,
no plans
man.
to make a video. I'll just. I think I'm doing KS Santa's show, and then I'm probably just
Okay.
I actually just want to play games. I don't want to do it.
I
I
know
haven't
the
played
feeling. Yeah.
Better Farm's on like 46 hours, and I'm still in the same location as I was like a month ago. Like just doing, just
Yeah.
talking to random people. So I want to finish that game. I think I need to move on. Especially, I don't want to. I don't really want to be playing at them if it's Cyberpunk or Baldur's Gate at the same time. So, but anyways, man, listen, it's good chat again. I'll talk to
Cool,
you
man. Always,
maybe
always.
tomorrow or Monday.
Yeah, definitely.
All right,
I know.
safe.
Take
Bye.
care, bro. Cheers.